The man thanked him for his work, then said that this was his reward and invited him to come again and sell more, calling him Scarapirapon. The protagonist thanked him in return, but thought that this was not enough. Having cool skills in another world is cool, but he didn't choose martial arts. In this world, he works as an alchemist, creating and selling various things to make a living. He doesn't even dream of traveling. He can't make expensive potions because all the ingredients needed for them can only be found in dangerous places or bought for a lot of money. And there are already plenty of simple and cheap potions on the market. Newbies are forced to take on work that no one else wants to do, and it takes a lot of time and effort. It has become a habit for him, and he can't hire anyone because he doesn't want to show off his skills. He was thinking about buying a servant. If he had not made any mistakes, a magical contract was made between the master and the servant, which forced the servant to keep all the secrets of his master. He was very embarrassed, but he could not do without it. When he entered, a salesman approached him, greeted him, said he was seeing him for the first time, and then asked who he was looking for. The man then replied that he needed someone who could do very delicate work. The merchant offered him a girl who was obedient in everything. Then he turned to her and told her to be friendly with Paracelsus. The man also added that the girl was not particularly beautiful, but as a partner she was very good because she was well trained. When the main character looked at the price tag, he thought the price wasn't too high. The girl said that scary people come here, and if anyone buys her, they will do something bad to her. She begged with tears in her eyes to take her away. The main character swallowed with fear. The merchant decided that he would probably burst into tears. He didn't look rich, so he didn't want to waste time. Let him buy something and go home. Then Paracelsus saw a girl in the box. He noticed that there was not even a price tag on her. Then the merchant explained that she was an elf who had been cruelly tortured for many decades, or even hundreds of years. She had no arms, legs, tongue, eyes, or even eardrums. Elven blood is very expensive, so the man kept it here, but lately he had not been able to extract a single drop. He wondered if she no longer had a husband to restore her strength. Paracelsus said he would buy her. He thought to himself that he would tell the merchant that he was taking advantage of his weakness. He remarked aloud that the girl was very exhausted. Then he noticed that fresh elven entrails were hard to come by, and asked if the man could sell them to her for less, along with the first girl. To this, the other asked if he was really an alchemist. The merchant asked him for 200,000 zeni for both items. He agreed. The man thought the price was high, but why didn't he even try to lower it? Out loud, he suggested signing the contract right away. Servants obey a magical contract. This is one of the sorcerer's spells, otherwise there will be problems with them. According to this contract, the master's orders are law, and the servant must take care of his own safety unless it contradicts the first rule. If it is the first girl, her master must pay her a reward of at least 3% of the profit received through her labor. After the girl pays the master 800,000 zeni, she will receive freedom and all the rights of a citizen. Any violence is prohibited. Even someone who is at the bottom, if he works hard, can become an honorary citizen of his country. This law has been in effect for 100 years. The man does not know how it is in neighboring foreign countries. Paracelsus asked the elf about the terms of the contract, and he replied that there were only 2 points: to follow the master's orders and to take care of her own safety. There was no separate personal contract for her. The merchant said that the deal was done, and he was transferring the rights to the 2 servants. Then he asked to give him the contract. The protagonist shouted that he was hot, but the man replied that he was not allowed to move. The seller said that he was now a complete man. Paracelsus asked what would happen if she violated the terms of the contract. To this, the seller replied that the contract acted like hypnosis. This also applied to the boy himself. The merchant said he would like to receive the money within a week, because this check was cursed. With each delay, he would feel worse. The latter thought to himself that he would never be able to get used to checks. After a while, Paracelsus left the room with the girls. The servant asked if he really had magic, to which he replied, something like that. He thought that this wasn't real magic at all. It was just using skill recipes from all over the universe. If you do everything according to the instructions, it would definitely work. But once the recipe was used, it disappeared. After reading the recipe, he said that there was nothing complicated, then turned to Nora and told her to buy certain products, and he would buy the first half of the ingredients himself, after which they agreed to meet at the square. The girl told him that she couldn't read, and then the main character suggested they go together. Nora asked to be allowed to help him carry the burden. After some time, they reached his house. The girl introduced herself again and promised that she would do everything possible for him. If he needed anything, just let him know. He also gave his name. Then he suggested that they start, as time was short, so it was better to take the simplest combination. They would prepare a potion for humans that worked well on elves. You need to pour the healing herbs and spirit powder into a frying pan, pour in the oil, and fry until the color changes. The girl remarked that it was very similar to cooking. He agreed with her. Pour water into a saucepan, add what was prepared in the first point, and a little of what symbolizes the mouth of the river. When it boils, the dish is ready. He noted that the bodies of elves are more spiritual than human ones, and now it is unlikely that she will be able to take anything inside. Nora asked if he was really going to cut her up when she got better. She could help, because she had already done something similar with a cow. To this he replied that he wanted to give her back her body, and he would not cut her up. The girl asked him why he was doing this. Was it because elves were so rare? He replied that that was probably why. The potion was already ready, and now it was time to examine the elf. The main character asked her if she knew the girl's name. She replied that she didn't know anything. The merchant called the girl nameless. Then Paracelsus turned to the elf and said that he would examine her now. He would start with her head. There were many old wounds inside the ear, and the eardrum was so damaged that it could no longer heal. The skin is also in bad condition, having been in dirty conditions for a long time. It looks even worse than he thought. Then he turned to Nora and asked her to examine the lower part. The girl obeyed him, looked around and said that everything was fine. The place was well kept. The main character said that everything was fine. The water wouldn't boil, and asked the girl to bring water from the well in the garden. She agreed. Then Paracelsus said that he would better go alone. She should stay and look after the elf. He would call her when the water boiled. The girl stopped him and said that she would do everything herself. After a while, the bath was ready. Nora said that there was probably enough salt. The protagonist replied that the temperature was perfect. He dropped a little water into his eye to test its properties. It didn't sting. After that, the guy said that she had been bathed. Nora asked if the medicine was supposed to be taken orally, to which he replied that if she suddenly put something in her stomach that she hadn't taken in a long time, she would immediately throw it all up. She needed to take the medicine gradually, as if her whole body was at once. Elfinia felt her body touch the water and began to move. Then Paracelsus told her not to worry. It was just a bath. The protagonist thought that if the medicine was well absorbed, the magical energy of the bath would gradually disappear. Then he went to the tama flower and broke off one petal. He went to the bathtub and dropped a flower in it. He explained that the petals of this plant could absorb mana. When mana was absorbed, they turned dark blue. Nora said that his magic was simply amazing. The main character said that when the flower changes color, you need to take a potion and pour it into the bath. After that, the petal really turned white, and everyone was surprised that it happened so quickly. Paracelsus thought he had poured too little, because this portion would have been enough for a person for a whole day. The petal turned blue again, and then immediately turned white. He said that they must be just joking with him. The main character said that she must have been very hungry. So he decided to pour out the entire bottle of potion, and added that he would go look for another bottle. Nora called him and said that he had wonderful healing methods. She invited him to look and showed him that the elf's hair was glowing. The girl asked why they were glowing. To this, the main character replied that it was not just the glow. If you look from a distance, the body looks a little dim. Even if you take an elf by the hand, you won't feel anything. That's because her body is made up of almost nothing but something else. Nora asked him if he felt dizzy when he touched her. Then she asked if this was the size of the astral body of the elves. Paracelsus thought she was listening carefully. Then he said aloud that he had seen ghosts. But this was quite different. Astral bodies have no precise shape. What sorcerers call mana is the primal matter. Since there are many sorcerers, they invented this common name. The basic elements are fire, air, water, earth, as well as astral bodies, physical bodies, and metals. Everything that exists is made up of them. Mages use these elements to perform miracles called magic, and alchemists try to obtain various substances from them. It is believed that the physical body is like a container for the astral body, and the astral body is for the soul. Can there be any primary elements instead of the astral body? Is this even possible? The protagonist exclaimed that this was exactly what was needed, although he himself did not fully understand. But it could work. It seemed that they had a chance to return her body. Every body has its own characteristics, and even if you make limbs for it with great care, if they are even slightly different, they will not take root and will deteriorate. However, the original matter will no longer seem alien to the body. He thinks that if he makes a hand out of the original matter, it will probably fit perfectly, like his own. All that remains is to get enough of this matter. But then he says that nothing will come of it. The first substance tends to turn into matter. Once this happens, it is impossible to turn it back. People can only take advantage of small imperfections in the air and the substance that has not yet become true matter. He showed Nora the vial of primary substance he had collected over the year. They were going to restore her strength now, and then decided to move her to bed. After some time, the main character found himself in the library. Nora called him and asked what he was doing. He replied that he was looking for information about elves. She said that she had dried the girl, and she was now sleeping. Paracelsus said that it would be difficult for him without the girl, and thanked her. At this moment, Nora suddenly shuddered and fell to her knees. The main character was very worried about her. The girl said it was okay, it was just the power of the mark. She felt better when she was praised. He shouldn't worry. At the same time, she showed that she had this mark on her chest. Paracelsus apologized to her, to which she replied that he should praise and thank her more often. After that, she placed her hand in the mark, and everyone was surprised. She took out a scroll from there and said that everything was as she thought. It was a list of rewards that automatically updated every time she received an award from him. The main character said that he didn't give her anything, and she replied that his heart, not his mind, made the decision, and the sincere thought that it would be difficult for him without her was a benefit for her. Nora said she couldn't read and asked him to do it. He replied that it said 3% profit. She now had 25,000 zeni in her account. He remarked that he had clearly overpraised her. She agreed, smiling. The girl said she would be free in a moment, and the main character replied that he had 200,000 zen to take to that merchant. He handed her a bag of money. Nora said she understood everything, and he also gave her another bag with 20,000 in it. He asked her to spend this money on clothes and said that she didn't have to give him the change back. She could spend it however she wanted. The girl confidently said that she might be a servant, but she was definitely not a beggar. She would earn money, redeem herself, and even give back the change. Paracelsus decided to himself that this was very funny. He said she belonged to him. He asked her to change into clean clothes and rest so that she would have the strength to do a good job tomorrow. She should see this as a contribution to her future work. Nora disappeared, then said that she had gone to buy a present for the elf as well. He thanked her and remembered that he had completely forgotten about the girl. The girl walked through the streets of the city and remembered her past. She had short hair and handcuffs on her hands. Someone said that servants were only bought within the country. The man said that he had never met such rude girls, to which the merchant replied that he was just unlucky. Then the man added that at least he had spoken up when he had insulted her. The merchant laughed. When the man left, the merchant said he didn't want to deal with people who didn't know how to treat their servants. This contract was a mess. It would have to be rewritten. Then he turned to Nora and told her to greet her senior comrades. Even in such a world, one should not forget about politeness. But she did not answer anything. She simply turned her head away. The merchant laughed at her and said that she should learn to behave herself. He promised to teach her well and make her a real servant. Nora said she wanted to learn the written language of this country well. She asked him to teach her the letters. She planned to read a lot of books, learn everything, and leave here as soon as possible. The merchant asked her if she was stupid, saying that only a poor and foolish person would buy something like her. It would be a miracle if he had even one book in his house. The man asked if she knew who stupid people love, those who are even stupider than them, so don't teach her the alphabet. If she suddenly learns, let her pretend that she can't read. Then they will show her everything and read it to her themselves. The trader said that from her perspective, the current situation may seem strange, but even amidst the absurdity, there are rules and ways to make money. After some time, the girl returned home. She said that she had already taken a shower. At that moment, the main character was lying on the couch and reading a book. He turned to her and said that he had something interesting. According to legend, elves were the first inhabitants of this world. They were created in the same way as God, from the same substance that filled his body. Thus, an ideal life appeared, beautiful both externally and in soul. Then he created dragons from fire, dwarves from metal, and humans from earth. However, God did not consider these creations to be so successful. The only ones who became his favorites were the elves. They were immortal, and God gave them the power to change the entire world. The protagonist asked where the elves' immortality had gone. He was told that they lost it when they fell in love with humans. Then he turned to Nora and told her to look at the text. He sat down to show her. She said she couldn't read. Paracelsus asked why she was dressed like that. To this, Nora replied that she had bought it with small change. After all, he himself had told her to spend the money as she saw fit. He awkwardly agreed, and then the girl asked what he really didn't like. The protagonist asked her if she would receive a great reward just because he touched her, to which she replied, "If you think so, then so be it." She said that the owner said that she was very beautiful and that he seemed to want to touch her body. Maybe she could even make a good living from it. She says it very frankly. Then Paracelsus touched her and wondered if she was really so tender that she seemed about to melt. But at the same time she was cheerful, resilient, and brave. She asked him about the reward. He agreed, and then the girl decided to touch him herself. He asked her to wait, joking that she would squeeze all the money out of him. Nora replied that if he had no right to do that, he should tell her to stop. A new day has come. Nora asked him how much he had already earned, and the main character replied that it was about 2 million zeni. The girl laughed. Paracelsus himself said that he was not a good master. He fired his servant the day after he bought him. He didn't have much money, so he asked if he could pay the debt in installments. She agreed to this. The main character said that although they only spent 1 day together, he had fun even when he got his freedom. He asked her to remember that he was always by her side. If she needed anything, she could turn to him. Nora immediately asked what he was talking about. She had no intention of becoming free at all. The guy was shocked by her words. She said she couldn't make a couple million in a night anywhere else and that she would make a fortune with him. Of course, he could have just ordered her to do it, but he interrupted and asked if that was really the case. The protagonist asked if she could stay and work here when he was free, to which she replied that then the spell of the contract would disappear. Paracelsus thought about it and asked if it would be more profitable for her to leave everything as it was, in terms of earnings, and then said that it was very good. Nora asked him if he minded, explaining that she would take all his money, to which he replied that she was right. It wasn't very pleasant to be left penniless. He said that he was very lucky to have such a valuable person as his subordinate. He was even a little ashamed to admit it, but now he was happy because of all this debt. Now he was ready to work hard to earn the necessary amount so that she could stay as long as she wanted. Paracelsus said that the elf needed expensive medicine to restore her magical powers, and he wanted to cure her body. Besides, he also owed Nora a considerable amount of money. The main character said that this was why he decided to earn some extra money. The girl replied that it was good. After that, he put a huge stack of papers on the table. Nora asked what it was. He replied that it was a record of everything he had ever created. He suggested they see what they could make of it. The girl asked him if he had forgotten that she could not read. He replied that she only needed to remember 4 characters. S was the highest, and C was the lowest. All the entries have a similar table at the beginning. Market price, difficulty of production, difficulty of finding materials, and difficulty of storage. The indicators may be inaccurate because he assessed everything at his own discretion. For example, mithril silver is difficult to synthesize, and the material is difficult to obtain, but there is no risk of injury during the production process. The finished metal is easy to store, does not spoil, and is expensive. She said this quite clearly. They immediately set to work. After a while, she said that it seemed they were done. To this, he replied that they had only left the sheets with the difficulties of obtaining materials for B and C. In the end, they choose recipes with a production difficulty level of S or A. These options become their top candidates. She wondered why they weren't interested in the market price, since she really wanted to make money. They replied that this requires expensive or rare materials, and if the finished product fails to sell, you can lose a lot of money. Therefore, they choose to make simple things that are easy to make and always in demand. She asked if the high level of complexity of production meant that it would be difficult and dangerous to create this thing. If it didn't work out, would it be possible to sell the item? And if they got injured, that would be the end of it. To this, Paracelsus replied that there would be no problem with that. He would explain everything later. First, we had to deal with them. Norris said that she understood, but they would not take any chances. Injuries meant losses. Among the other entries were 3 recipes that suited them. A magic bomb for various purposes, a luck potion that grants luck for the whole day, and bells for communication. Nora asked what they could do with it. She thought it would be best to create a good luck potion. He agreed, but added that before choosing anything, they needed to explain how difficult and dangerous it was to create such things. The protagonist asked if she had to continue keeping things a secret after the contract ended. The girl replied that once the contract was terminated, all restrictions were lifted. She said that it should work if he said that after the contract was over, she had to forget all the secrets she had been keeping. He replied that controlling people's memories was a very powerful ability. Nora agreed with him and said that there was a very long magic formula. The contract itself was a small ritual of enchantment. The promise to become a servant could not be simple or weak. The main character said that she knew everything well, like a real witch, but the girl replied that she didn't know anything about it at all. She just heard something from the merchant. To this, Paracelsus said that was wonderful. Next time she should tell him even more, to which she at first agreed, and then added that she had already told him everything she knew. He said he wanted to look at his long formula, because he didn't know magic, so he probably wouldn't be able to understand it. He held out his hand to her, but she refused him. Nora said that this was the only place that only employees had access to. No one else could enter here. If he tried to go through, he would be repelled by a strong spell. He apologized to her. Becoming a servant means placing a powerful curse on your life. It could be said that he, as a partner in the contract, was also affected by this curse. Nora said that she never tells other people's secrets. It's good that she does her job properly. The main character smiled and replied that he knew that. Paracelsus said he was going to tell her information that any alchemist would give his life for. It would be bad if she became a target for villains because of it. She said that even under torture she would not reveal the secret. To this he asked, "What if the injury is the end of everything?" He replied that choosing a job and actually being responsible for it are two different things. Then he gave her an order. Paracelsus said that he would reveal a secret to her now. But as soon as she was freed from the contract or someone else tried to learn this secret, she would immediately forget about it. And he also added that it was an order. The girl replied that she understood everything. Then he said that he would tell her, after which he said that he came from another world. He used to live in a normal world without magic. Of course, there were things that he didn't like, but overall, everything was not bad. There's no point in talking about a place you'll never return to, so he won't go into details. He was hit by a car, a truck, and he died. After some time, he woke up in an unfamiliar place. In front of him stood an old man, whose name, it seems, was Laus. The old man greeted him and said that the hero had found himself in a new world, as if he had been reborn. Paracelsus was surprised by these words. The man said he had prepared a gift for himself for his second birthday. He could choose 2 cheating skills he liked from this catalog. The main character asked what kind of world this was and why he was going there. He understood that knowledge about this world would influence his choice. The man replied that it was tiring him, and asked to decide faster. Paracelsus apologized to him. He thought about how he didn't want to learn martial arts because he would have to fight all the time to survive. It would be nice to have a skill that would save him in a moment of need. After that, the main character said that he chose the skills of creating various recipes and the ability to create save points. The old man replied that it was a small thing, but still agreed with this choice. Then the man told Paracelsus to go to sleep, and when he woke up, he would be in another world. He also advised him to simply live there, to act as his heart and soul told him to. When the main character woke up, there was truly a different world around him. For some reason, he immediately knew how to use his unique abilities. Paracelsus said that perhaps Nora would not believe the story, to which she replied that he should tell the whole story and then they could discuss what she would believe. She also asked if his power was really related to alchemy. He explained that when he chooses a recipe, all the necessary ingredients and steps immediately appear in the notebook. You can see 5 items at a time. The sheets in this notebook never run out. There are many options, and you can choose the right recipe mentally. If the owner of this recipe strictly follows all the instructions, the result will always be perfect, regardless of his skills. When the dish is ready, the place is freed up. The second power is the ability to create save points. He can create special stones called save points whenever he wants. But if he creates a new stone, the previous one will immediately disappear. If he breaks such a jewel, he will return to the moment when he created it and remember everything that happened before that. That is, if the jewel is destroyed, he will find himself at the same time and in the same place. The price was that he would lose the memories and feelings associated with the most precious thing to him. Once the stone broke, he never used that ability again. Nora had said that the 2 skills didn't mix. He agreed with her. It would be a real disaster if it suddenly broke. He usually keeps the thing in a strong box of mithril silver. He is not used to locking the box, but only the chosen ones can see it. Paracelsus asked if she would be allowed to look too, but was refused. The main character said that he would make it so that she could see her later. If something happened to him and he died, he asked her to break the stone. Then he asked if she could do it, but she replied that she couldn't. Nora explained that if her master died, her contract would be void, and she would forget all the secrets she had been keeping. She asked if he understood that then she would forget about the stone as well. The protagonist was stunned. The main character said that he understood everything and wanted to be safe in case of the worst. But she asked if he really intended to make a bomb. Paracelsus asked what would happen if she kept only this secret in her memory. She replied that she should not rush. She should think everything over carefully, and only then make a decision. He asked her if she had any questions. She replied that she wanted to make sure his power was real. After checking this, she asked for a new crystal to be created, as it had to be made right when she learned the secret. After a while, he handed her a gold coin of Hermes. It was issued by the Society of Alchemists, an association of leading alchemists who help with rank advancement and other services. No one knows how to handle money better than alchemists. The obverse depicts Hermes Trismegistus, the master alchemist. Nora said she loved them. The reverse depicts an owl with red eyes, a symbol of wisdom. Here, a lunar eclipse is considered a sign of bad luck and illness. 100 gold coins with Hermes, an aquarium of the right size, gravel, algae, and goldfish. That's all you need to make a lucky fish. Such a simple task will show them that all the recipes of the universe are real. The main character said that they should stand next to the aquarium and throw a gold coin from eye level. Hermes smiles at them. A piece of happiness is already in their hands. Paracelsus said that when they threw the second coin, an owl appeared and they were out of luck. Now they have to find the coins and start over. When the coins land on the right side, they are covered with gravel and seaweed, then left for a day. When the water is safe, they are added to the eggs. Nora said that getting 100 Hermes in a row is a real challenge. The girl asked if this was alchemy, to which he replied that this transformation of base metals into gold was true alchemy, but its effect was rather weak. Nora said that no one would buy it, to which he replied that customers trust the certificates of the Alchemist Guild and are wary of suspicious places. She repeated again that no one would buy it anyway. Paracelsus said that now she understands how difficult it is to create all the conditions for the fish of happiness. To this she replied that she would never agree to such a thing. He added that now this notebook is coming onto the scene. The object in his hand started to glow, and the main character said that it was the recipe for the lucky fish. I thought he was just joking. He hit himself on the forehead and said there was a way with gold coins. The girl asked if something was wrong. He replied that there were many ways, many different ways to accumulate luck. He remembered the right method in his head and wrote it down in his notebook. There is a recipe for making all coins thrown into the aquarium always fall heads up. If his abilities are real, that is exactly what will happen. Nora looked into the aquarium and said that they were all falling upwards, like Hermes. 4 coins had already fallen to the right. The main character asked to tell if at least 1 coin fell in the wrong place. Paracelsus noticed that the coins were heavy, but advised them not to give up. In the end, all 100 coins fell with one side up. It was amazing. The guy asked her if she believed him. She said yes, and then asked how others coped with 100 coins. He said they used lucky charms, but even with them it was very difficult. The main character said that he needed to free up one spot, so he would have to go through the entire procedure to the end. Next comes the rubble. Nora asked if she could help him. He replied that he needed to check that too. She asked if it was really that difficult to raise fish, and if it was possible to raise more of them. He replied that it was better to leave everything as it is, and not add any more fish. There are 3 reasons for this. First, it will be difficult to sell the fish for a high price. Second, the chemical association certificate is expensive. And third, he doesn't want others in the community to see how lucky he is all the time, because there are plenty of sneaky people among alchemists. Nora agreed with him, and Paracelsus said that all that was left was to wait for the egg to hatch. She asked if it was possible to get the coins already. In response, he explained that according to the recipe, you have to wait until the fry grow up. The girl said that it was dangerous to leave them in such a place. Gold coins are very valuable. To this he replied that she should not worry, because no one would even think of looking for coins in an aquarium. Almost no one goes there. After that, he left. So I looked around and said that the smell, although faint, was right here, where the shadow of the old building fell, and the humidity was high. So this was the place. She crawled across the floor, found a grasshopper, and stuck it in the ground with the other grasshoppers. She turned to the spirit that sleeps on this earth and asked to hear her voice. Her name is Nora Pathan. She is a sorceress from a distant land. She wanted her terrible wish to be heard. Suddenly, a creature with one large eye appeared from the ground. It asked the girl if she was calling it. The girl replied that she was. She worries that some intruder might steal the treasure her master left out in the open. The spirit asks why he doesn't take care of it. Nora says that her master is a bit careless. The spirit advised her to trust him. He knows how to hide well. He was pleased that she called him a spirit, and he asked her to contact him when she needed him. The girl thanked him. At that moment, the spirit quickly hid back underground. She didn't think it was weak, but she liked that this spirit was responsible for its work and easy to deal with. This was her first experience with such a cute creature. The girl thought about how people often choose to live where they are surrounded by souls similar to them. The thought made her laugh softly. The main character said that he had already shown the power of the recipes. Now it was time to choose between the magic bomb, the potion of luck, and the communication bell. The potion of luck, like the lucky fish, increases luck. The absence of impurities in the composition is of great importance, and this is very useful in practice. A drunken adventurer is less likely to encounter a monster or be hit by a weapon. Paracelsus showed a bottle of tincture and said that it was a real sample. Even influential people who have many enemies do not leave home without it. If you find a good client, one such recipe is enough to provide for yourself for life. Nor told him that it was time to start doing it. To which he replied that while talking about the pros, one should not forget about the cons. The certificate of the Alchemist Guild is not cheap. After these words, he grimaced. No one will buy this potion unless they see a manufacturing certificate that guarantees it was made correctly. They also need a certificate of efficacy that confirms that the potion really brings good luck. But registering these documents will reduce profits. About 20% of the product would go towards certifying its effectiveness, so she asked if he could test the potion on himself. He replied that if it were possible, the certificates would be unnecessary. Nora asked how she could find out how much her luck had increased. Tochi replied that she could simply toss coins, although he had heard that beetles were also used for this purpose. They take 100 beetles, mark one with paint and use a luck-boosting item. Then they kill the beetles one by one and see how long the marked beetle lasts. The protagonist asked if they were stupid, if they just flipped coins and didn't have to kill anyone. People think that by taking someone's life, they can make the outcome even stronger. Nora said that's how it really works. Although this applies more to witchcraft. The more people you kill and the greater their despair at the moment of death, the more luck the witch gains. Paracelsus said she looked very cool when she talked about witchcraft. He asked her to tell him something else. She replied that she didn't know anything else and suggested they return to discussing potions. He said that the second problem is the limited time of production. Some ingredients need to be obtained when there is a full moon outside. Also, when the season comes, alchemists start actively buying up these ingredients. The protagonist said that even if they decided to brew the potion, they would still have to wait for the full moon. Nora asked if that was about 2 more weeks. He replied that there was another, most unpleasant third problem. The purity of the prepared product turned out to be too high. He asked if it was really bad since he could make more money. He asked her not to worry. All luck potions sold in the open market are at most C grade or worse, and many are outright fakes. Because alchemists haven't yet mastered this technique, they often end up with particles of bad luck in their potions, all because they're trying to find a suitable match for luck. It's unlikely that a luck potion with a purity of Class B will ever be available for sale. In fact, even the existence of Class A potions is questionable. Nora wondered what kind of potion he was making. To this, he replied that when he cooks according to the recipe, he always gets a result even better than S. The result is an S-class elixir. The girl was very surprised by this answer. She said that was very good, to which he replied that it was not so, because the cunning alchemists watched their colleague from morning till night with the help of golems and artificial fairies. Inexperienced alchemists could lose everything in an instant. It would be okay if they just took the work away. But every year, one of the talented newcomers disappears. It's dangerous to stand out and attract unnecessary attention. Nora agreed that he was right. The girl offered to prepare a good luck potion as soon as they finished their preparations. She was very serious about it. She said that they only need to find rich customers and get them goods without any certificates. Then they will make good money. If the customers become regulars, they won't have to brew many potions. The main character tried to explain to her that it was impossible, but she confidently stated that they would definitely do it. Then he suggested moving on to the next recipe. These are communication bells. They are created at the same time. They have the same size and shape, so a connection arises between them. The less the bells differ in color and shape, the stronger their properties. The main character said that he created this couple himself. The girl replied that they really always appear at the same time. Paracelsus said that they only have different amber. And all because these products are of poor quality, even the cheapest ones on the market will be better. Nora asked if everything would definitely work if she followed the recipe exactly. To this, he replied that the recipe did not apply to the second point. This recipe describes how to make one thing, but he can make as many as he wants. Once he finishes cooking the first time, the process is considered complete, and the recipes disappear. Both bells are cast at the same time, but they cannot be completed together. Only the bell that is ready a moment earlier becomes a true work of art. The next dish turns out a little better than if you cook it without a recipe at all, but it seems that its main strength manifests itself precisely at the moment of completion of cooking. The main character said that the most important thing for this alchemical product is that there should be no difference even in the smallest details. You could say that his alarm bells, of which only one worked, were a complete failure. They sounded disgusting, and everything looked blurry through the hole. She added that even great recipes are not all powerful. The main character tried to say that it turns out they need to make a bomb, but the girl replied that she wouldn't do it. Then he asked her to at least listen to what was being discussed. She agreed. The way this bomb is made is like a sorcerer casting a spell. Such a large bomb could easily blow up a house, so Nora asked him not to bring it home. The main character reassured her, saying that there was no need to be afraid. The bomb would not explode until he connected the detonator and entered the correct code. Everything was done strictly according to the instructions, so there could be no accidents. These bombs are designed to play the mage's spells when they receive a special magical signal from the detonator. Once the signal is received, the command panel commands the elements to change. The air near the command panel turns into flammable gas, causing the bomb to explode and fill the area with gas and flames. The team approaches the fire element, which ignites the gas, causing an explosion. Nora asked why there was a water element. He replied that it was as a safety precaution in case a team from outside came. Then the farthest center would activate first, and the water element would turn into water. She asked what would happen if the bomb caught fire. He replied that then the water part would disappear, the fire would not be able to burn, and the air would become normal. There would still be an explosion, but it would just damage hearing and cause burns. Then he said that they put a special cap on the exposed wire that blocked the magic, and now the bomb was ready. He asked her if she could see that the bomb was now completely safe. The main character said that in order for bombs to always sell well, even a perfect bomb recipe wouldn't attract too much attention. If you act carefully, nothing will happen. Nora agreed and asked to set the bomb so that if it exploded, the wave would destroy the stone. He promised to do so. She added that it was only temporary, until they found a better option. The girl asked how much force would be needed to destroy the crystal. The explosion would kill them both, but it would be funny if the crystal remained intact. To this, the boy replied that he would have to think about it. He decided to place the crystal in a box with one side facing the bomb. A metal pin was to be attached to the back wall of the box. When the shockwave from the explosion pressed against the wall, the pin would pierce the crystal. The protagonist will place the box in the affected area so that it does not interfere with his work. He assures her that it is safe. Nora notices that he looks pleased. She asked him if he really liked the bomb, and he said maybe he did. When he imagined the bomb exploding and destroying everything around him, he felt light and good. Nora said he seemed more shy to her because of his words about being afraid of the people in the alchemy circle. At this, the guy laughed and said it was good that at least he knew how the bomb worked. At that moment, someone rang the doorbell. The protagonist asked loudly if he had arrived yet. The stranger was standing on the threshold. Nora asked if it was really a bell for communication. Paracelsus replied that there was an identical bell at the entrance. He rang it 4 times at once, so now he always knew when guests were coming, no matter where he was in the house. It was Tottori. He thanked him for not forgetting about Arlenbeek's magic shop. But every time Tottori notices how terrible the device sounds, he just has very sensitive hearing. The main character introduced Nora to Tottori and said that she had recently appeared at his house. Tottori remarked that such a beauty should have been dressed better. Paracelsus wanted to introduce the guy to her, but the guy interrupted him and introduced himself, adding that Paracelsus was his regular client. He blushed. Tottori asked if he still felt embarrassed when he heard his name. During their first meeting, he was so embarrassed that he couldn't even pronounce his name clearly, and Tottori didn't understand a thing. The main character said that he didn't like to say his name. Tottori interrupted him and asked why they were calling him. To this, Paracelsus replied that they wanted to sell something. It was a magic bomb. The man said it was dangerous. It was just sitting on the table and seemed to be well balanced. But they must have been crazy to put the bomb that high. Tottori said that the sturdy elements are tightly packed and produce a wonderful sound. The workmanship is perfect, and no bells can compare to it. The guy said that Paracelsus usually doesn't bargain, so he'll give a good price right away. He offered 90,000 zeni. The main character replied that he'll make 20 more pieces later, so he might raise the price to 100,000. Tottori said that if all 20 were of the same quality, they could be sold for a profit, and offered 95,000 for each. The protagonist and Nora exchanged satisfied glances. Paracelsus wanted to say that they had already agreed, but Nora suggested agreeing to 130,000. Tatori was surprised and said that someone had not been listening to the conversation at all. Then the man offered a price of 100,800 zeni. He promised to bring all the materials in 2 visits. Their cost would be deducted from the total amount. If the quality deteriorated even a little, he would have to redo everything. Tatori said he was happy to work with them. The main character shook his hand and replied that it was mutual. After that, the guy turned to the girl. He said that his employer trains the maid for free, of course. If her master doesn't mind, she can learn useful skills for everyday life, so it's definitely worth coming. The main character said that it was wonderful. The girl blushed, but replied that she was not interested in such things. Paracelsus said that she could go. Tatori asked if he could take the bomb because he wanted to show it to his boss. The protagonist agreed and said he would pack everything up right away. The guy bowed and thanked him. Then he turned to Nora again and said that their study group was also a mutual aid community. If she suddenly had any problems, she could feel free to tell them. Tatori asked her if they were okay and laughed. He also added that he was glad she had found a master she could rely on. At that moment, the main character entered the room with the aquarium and asked what this stone was doing there. He also asked where the aquarium had gone and whether its gold coins had been stolen. The spirit at that time thought that it was some kind of fraud. Nora also came into the room and asked him to touch the top of the stone. She asked him how it felt. He replied that the surface was rough, like all stones. Then the girl told him to look at the hand he was touching the stone with. He saw that it was wet. Nora said that the spirit was just creating an illusion for him, and that the aquarium was actually there. He asked if the spirit was really strong enough to do such a thing. She explained that such magic was only possible on its territory. The protagonist told what he had heard. Spirits appear when the spiritual energy that comes from the remains of creatures comes together. Who would have thought that this one would be so strong? She replied that he was saying some strange things. Nor says that humans are also a mixture of water, grass, and living things. She sees little difference between humans and spirits. Besides, if he binds the spirit to himself, he won't be able to live here anymore. He has to choose his words carefully. The protagonist asked her if she knew so much about wizards because she was one herself. She bowed and apologized for not saying so sooner. He asked her why she had been silent. She said that the merchant warned her to keep quiet because they believe that a witch either scares people or is used by others. Nor decided to confess to him because he didn't fit that description. She asked if it scared him, and if so, she promised to stop practicing witchcraft. To which he asked if it really looked like he was scared. The main character smiled sweetly at her and asked if this spirit was somewhere nearby. The girl replied that it was. He asked if he should pray. She replied that if he approached it without sufficient knowledge, he might inadvertently offend the spirit. Every time he passed the well, he should bow slightly. Nora blushed and asked why Paracelsus was looking at her with a smile. He replied that he was glad that she had told him everything. She said that he had scared her. Night fell. There was almost no light in the house. The main character entered the room and asked how things were going. Nora replied that she had just finished wiping Kokomochi, and then Paracelsus asked again who it was, which made the girl blush. She said that in that language the word meant child. She remembered how she had once taken care of her little sister. It would be impolite to call someone who was struggling to survive that, just an elf. The protagonist agreed that she should be given a name that Nori would find easy to pronounce. He would also call her Koko. They would learn her real name after the body was restored. He decided to start rebuilding her body with the simplest thing, the skin. It was thin, so it didn't take much material. Nora agreed with him and said that it was always best to start simple. The main character said that he would cut healthy skin from his buttocks, then multiply it and grow it like a plant. The girl wanted to stop him, but at that moment Koko spread her legs. Nora explained that the girl would ask him out if he touched her buttocks. The protagonist blushed heavily. She said she would be glad if he would use the place. They wouldn't get rid of her as long as she was useful. It might make her feel better. She asked him not to delay and help her. The main character cried and asked her what he should do because he couldn't do anything. Nora said she would do everything herself, and then asked him to step aside. Nora told the main character that it was time to watch. He stood in the corner, turning away from the bed. With tears in his eyes, he asked if she was really finished. She said yes. He tried to apologize to her, but she said there was something more important she wanted to check on when Koko was better. She put her hand on his back and explained that it was thought communication. He was surprised. The ability to communicate with spirits is an important skill for shamans, but she also works with living beings. She can make her voice resonate in his spiritual body through touch. The main character asked her if she could hear him, and she replied that it seemed like he was trying to convey something to her mentally, but she couldn't hear anything. Nora asked if you remembered what she said about elves, that their bodies were mostly made up of spiritual essence, and at the same time mentioned that this girl was different from them. Either way, if Koko is a spirit, even if she is still alive, perhaps it will be possible to contact her, or at least let her hear her voice, and at the same time check what is happening to her soul and mind. The main character told her that she was incredible, and the girl replied that she tried to hide her shamanic gift, but the truth still came out. Nora knelt down in front of the bed, and suddenly it seemed to her that she could feel her own soul. Everything seemed to be going well. In her mind, she wondered if she could hear herself. There was no answer. Then she asked permission to look into her soul. It was dark inside. Nothing could be seen at all. Here she saw the curse inside her. They were huge chains. The girl was surprised that there were so many of them. The protagonist asked her what happened. Nora replied that it was a curse. Koko's soul was bound by countless curses. Paracelsus asked her if it was the same as the magic of the servant contract. Tai replied that they also used curses, but on a completely different level, so they were different things. Such strong curses wouldn't work properly, even if they were to cover the entire body. They even had to create a separate space for contract magic, which they called the servant room. Suddenly her gaze stopped at the mark on her chest. Nora said they're here, in the servants' quarters. They're made by stretching the skin of a servant somewhere else. Everyone has at least one of these rooms. The main character was surprised by her words about how the skin could stretch so much. The girl said that if she could read the formula inside, she would understand what the curse was. Paracelsus wondered if the curse could affect anyone outside the room, and she replied that it was true. Such a curse would be enough to kill an ordinary person. After that, she touched her mark and started to push the walls apart. The protagonist noticed something black there, but she explained that it was a curse and could not be touched. Nora said that if she didn't return, he would need to close the room and call someone who knew shamanism. After these words, a black mist enveloped the girl's body. When she went inside, she saw that it was a magical servant contract. But she felt that there was something else, something deeper, holding Koko's soul, but she couldn't figure out where it was. That year, she saw a whole chain of curses upon herself. Many prohibitions were imposed on her. She was not allowed to communicate, sleep, breathe deeply, remain sane, enjoy life, give joy to others, and even recover, until she begins to beg him for help. When her days are numbered, he orders her to live. She worries about her own stupidity, shame, pain, constantly trembling with fear both day and night. The main character immediately addressed Nora by name. The girl asked him not to approach her. Part of the curse was transferred to her hand. She raised her hand, and a black spot followed it. The spot quickly wrapped around her arm, turning everything from her hand to her elbow black. The main character asked her if she was okay, and she replied that shamanic art appeared thanks to people who constantly quarreled with each other. She remembered how people would ask to make someone miserable and crippled, finding a way to give their selfish desires power. But then she thought it wouldn't work. The shaman places her first curse on herself. People are always fighting and cursing each other, and she wants to be at least a little better than others. She likes curses like this the most, which have a desire for something higher. Nora's face was filled with anger, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. She was certain she would never forgive the person who had cursed her so. The protagonist immediately asked her if she could do anything about the curse that had returned to her. He asked her to immediately cleanse her hands of the black stain. Nora said that to break the curse, you have to align your emotions with those contained within it and keep them under control. This is not easy for her. The main character immediately asked her why it was difficult, and the girl replied that she didn't think things would be exactly like this. She could not even imagine that such a deep and tender feeling was hidden in this curse, and it was love. Then the main character asked if she could do something if this feeling filled her heart. She was told that yes, but now she was filled with anger, and because of this, the task could not be completed. Nora said that perhaps the curse was deliberately placed so that it would be difficult for anyone to remove. At that moment, Paracelsus was taking off his jacket. She asked why he was doing that. The main character leaned over and suggested that she take off her top clothes too. She was surprised and asked why, but eventually agreed. Then he lay down next to her on the bed, hugged her, pressed her to him, and said that when they were so close to each other, skin to skin, he had feelings very similar to love. After that, he asked her what she thought about it, and she said that he had to be careful. If he touched the curse, it could pass on to him. But he said that it was better this way than her death. After these words, Nora turned to him and said that it would be better this way. She said, "Koko mihali." He did not understand what that meant. The girl explained that the curse was passing, and then asked him to move away from her. The main character said that the curse had hit her. Nora replied that it wasn't that easy to get rid of the curse. She simply moved it to where it would cause the least damage, and then gradually deal with it. Paracelsus asked her what she had said as they lay in each other's arms. The girl replied that she had said nothing, and asked him not to make up anything. He apologized to her. A new day had begun. The sun was shining outside. The main character and the girl were sitting at the table. She asked if it was really a letter. He replied that it was. He said that if he suddenly forgot his skill, he would try to write down its essence, its feeling, and its application as accurately as possible. If he suddenly lost consciousness, she would need to tell him to calm down and let him read this letter. Nora asked why there were 3 letters. He replied that the first letter was a collection of his memories after arriving here, and he wanted her to read it first. The second letter told about his skills. In the third letter, he tried to describe this girl as accurately as possible, because he was afraid that these memories might disappear too. She asked him why he was doing this. Nora asked him why he still considered his abilities the most important. She had already received an award that had never been given before, and he agreed. The main character told Tom that it would be hard for her too if he lost his skill. She added that she was only joking, and soon he would see for himself. In a year she would become better and would not give in to anything. Paracelsus said that in that case there was no need to be afraid of losing his talent, but he was sad that he would forget it. The girl replied that it was no problem. Nora would be the first again, so he could start. He said he would create a crystal that would perceive this place as a safe point. Suddenly the doorbell rang. The main character said that it was too early to deliver the materials. He opened the door and saw a girl in front of him. She greeted him, and he politely returned the greeting. She said she was pleased to meet him. Her name was Agnosia. She was a member of the Alchemical Association. Then she asked if his name was really Paracelsus. To this he answered in the affirmative, thinking to himself that she was beautiful. The girl said that she had heard that he had been to the servant shop last week and had bought an elf there, and then asked if she had been badly hurt. Exiled came to check on the girl. She apologized to him for showing up so unexpectedly. After that, the guy invited her into the house. Nora asked if they really had guests. Paracelsus asked her to bring tea. He told the guest that the elf was on the 2nd floor. The girl greeted the servant, and at that time he was thinking about something. Agnosia saw the elf and said that he had accomplished so much in such a short time. She asked if her condition really did not allow her to use the potion directly. She said that he would never have achieved such a result without precise knowledge of the correct technique. This is truly a wonderful job. The protagonist blushed at her words. Agnosia asked why he had spared neither time nor money for her. Perhaps he simply considered her body to be alchemical material. But he replied that he could not leave her there. When she recovered, he planned to grant her freedom. The alchemist told him that he was a good person, that she valued such people very much, and if he was having a hard time, he could always turn to her for help. He asked her if she really held a high position among the alchemists. She replied that there were only 3 adepts among the alchemists now, and there had never been a woman among them before. She was the first female adept in the entire world. The protagonist said that there was a huge difference between his 3rd level and hers, like between heaven and earth. Agnosia laughed and noted that she was very pleased to hear such words. After that, he asked what a person like her was doing among the servants. She showed him a stone she had found in the yard and said she could only use it for protection if he suddenly grabbed her body, to which he replied that he would not do that. Agnosia explained that just as a child grows up and flowers bloom brighter and brighter, so too can an ordinary stone turn into gold. The girl said that she had come here hoping to ease the elf's suffering, but now that she was feeling better, she asked him to take care of her. He replied that she could count on him. At that moment, Nora called them to tea. Agnosia had given him these objects. They were the eyes of truth. She had created them through alchemy and brought them especially for this girl. Then the alchemist poured the tea and remarked that it smelled pleasant, but she had never smelled such an aroma before. Nora said that a rodent had brought her this tea and then asked the alchemist's opinion. Agnosia said it was very tasty. Then she asked if she had made the nut cake herself. She said yes, she had. The alchemist said that if she hadn't been with that guy, they would have hired her right away. At that moment, the main character asked her to tell him more about those eyes. Ignatius replied that she no longer remembered them. They are called the eyes of truth. With them a person sees not light, but the very primary matter. They work even in complete darkness. The more developed they are, the better one can see the true essence of things and even the thoughts of other people. But this pair is her creation, and she is proud of it. They may be the sharpest eyes in the world. The eyes are covered with a large amount of primordial matter. so after insertion into the eye sockets, vision should return within a week. Paracelsus said that if an elf could reach her, she would quickly cure him. Then Agnosia offered to give him the girl, but he refused and said that he would cure her at any cost. The alchemist said it was wonderful, and she would definitely become better than she was before. There is nothing more important than becoming better. Then she reached out to him, took one eye and said she would take it, and let him make the other himself, and let it turn out better than this. After that, she turned around and said that if there were any difficulties, he could call her at any time, and then left the house. Nora wanted to contact the main character, but he said that everything would be done right away. He still had to prepare, as always, and he called her to follow him into the basement. Paracelsus asked her about it. It was her first time here. The girl said yes. She thought the walls of the room were covered with something. He said it was a special formula that repels magic. It sucks the mana out of creatures, helps protect against spy fairies and those who see ahead. But there is a limitation. The formula only absorbs a certain amount of mana at a time. Therefore, you need to leave the room so that the formula gradually releases the energy reserve. Using it on a permanent basis will not work. The guy showed her a special slime that absorbs sound, so everything that is said here will remain a secret. Time is short, so he quickly gets to the point. The main character said he didn't trust Agnosia. Maybe she put a curse on Koko. She asked him why he thought so. He replied that the eyes of truth looked too perfect. The color, size, weight, and even the shape of the blood vessels matched. He assumed that they were created at the same time. Paracelsus then said that he would never believe that there was no connection between alchemical creations and these eyes. It seemed to him that from the very beginning she wanted to keep one for herself, and at that moment, Agnosia wondered why he was delaying. Maybe she had already understood everything. She didn't understand why he didn't trust her either. He explained that although she had said she wanted to help, she hadn't done anything until he had picked Koko up from the store. She had the money, but he had never felt a genuine desire to help. But as soon as he bought Koko, she showed up, walked right into the house, as soon as they felt the curse. Even if she didn't send the curse, she was definitely involved. Nora thought about what she said. She is sure that the alchemist placed the curse. There are several reasons for this, but the main one is that she smells the same as the curse placed on Koko. Wow, what an unusual scent this perfume has. It's the first time she smelled something like that. She's probably right. That's why she had established a connection with Agnosia, so that she could attack at any moment. Normally, when a soul encounters a being of another type, such as a shaman, it would flinch. But this time, everything was different, because the curse was already inside the soul. The main character asked again, and she replied that they had become friends, and people always change under the influence of those with whom they have a close relationship. If the other person doesn't understand that they are cursed, the spell can't grow stronger. When that person starts a relationship with Nora, who takes the curse for granted, her heart gradually begins to feel the effects of the curse. A strong bond has many advantages, the main one being that it makes it easier to cast curses. Paracelsus also wondered if they really had a strong bond with her. He wondered what was happening to her hair. Nora said that she too thought it strange that she had been so careless as to let him see the other eye. If she had only brought one, he would not have suspected anything. The boy agreed with her. The main character said they need to hurry. As for the eye, he thinks it should be given to Koko. This girl is undoubtedly a true craftsman. She is strong and powerful. If she wanted to, she could easily finish them off in a moment. He believes she has her own reasons for acting differently. That is, they have to take care of Koko, but at the same time monitor the girl's mood and think about ways to defend themselves. If it becomes completely dangerous, they will run away. Nora agrees. Paracelsus said that perhaps it was not very courageous of him, to which the girl replied that nothing of the sort. There would be no point in his death now. Nora asked what was wrong with him, and he said he was a little cold. It looked like he was completely frozen. She asked if she could bring him some tea. He agreed. The protagonist said that the drink had a strange smell, to which he was told that it was a tea called Akipa. He realized that this was the name of a tree, and wondered if there really were many such trees growing here. Nora explained that this plant is poisonous, and if eaten in its pure form, it can cause diarrhea. But the poison can be neutralized with the help of another plant. The main character said he was interested. The girl replied that if that's the case, then we can cook it, and called him to the stove. She showed him the purple-green root and said it was a strong medicine. In large doses it caused nausea, but when mixed with ochapa, it became safe. She then uses itachiko to cool the broth. He asks what it is, and she explains that they pour it into another container. While the tea cools, she pours dried ohapa leaves and ginger into the teapot. You can add pokote or ukeo if you want. He pondered these names. When the container with the broth has cooled enough to be picked up by hand, add the choco to the kettle. Then they cover the lid and the peppery. You have to keep the peri and pekatakare hot. Then she told him a whole sentence in a language he didn't know. And then it dawned on her that she was speaking the language of her homeland. She apologized to him. To which the guy said that it was a very beautiful language. She said that the tea was ready. When he smelled its special aroma, he realized that the drink was very tasty and wonderfully warming. The main character said it was delicious and he really liked the scent. She replied that she was glad to hear that. Then he added that now he understood what she smelled like. Nora asked if she really smelled that bad. He explained that when she was sweaty and hot, her body gave off a smell he had never smelled before during their embrace. And then he realized that it was the smell of this tea. He said that the aroma could not be called unpleasant. On the contrary, he wanted to inhale it again and again. At that moment, the girl snatched the mug from his hands. She said she would bring him some regular tea. Her face turned very red. The main character began to remember what had happened. One of the men insulted Nora. The other told him that this was forbidden and that the boss would definitely not like it. But the first one replied that they were supposedly teaching her. Then he turned to the girl and threatened that she would not leave until she was obedient. The second man said that servants were the common property of all citizens, and they should not be harmed without reason. It was even written in the law. The boss said so too. The first man replied that he didn't care about the law. When the men left the room, Nora thought she could still endure the intimacy, but she simply wasn't destined to serve. Then someone called her, and at that moment her hair suddenly stood forward. She realized it was her father. The man apologized to her and explained that it had taken him a long time to find her. It is very difficult for a soul without a body to do anything on its own. Nora asked if he had really bound his soul with a curse. She said that after death he should have rested peacefully, and now his torment would only continue. He assured her not to worry. The girl said that there was nothing good in this. He decided to die himself, deprived himself of peace, tried to interfere in someone else's life without permission. He apologized to her. Nora asked if he meant that he would rescue her from captivity. Her father said that a shaman could not cast a curse on himself. Until today he had been powerless and soulless. Now he had become a part of her. Now he had become a... The girl said that it didn't change anything, and he replied that he knew one inexperienced but extremely talented sorceress. It was her. Nora said that even if she had the power, she still wouldn't be able to use it for herself. Then her father said that she would need connections here. Whether we like it or not, people are always influenced by those they associate with. For example, in a marriage, the husband always has a part of the wife, and the wife always has a part of the husband. He turned to Nora and told her to become a great shaman, teach others to feel the small but strong shaman within them, and then force them to place a curse on themselves. He told her to watch those she had already contacted, find out what they were forbidden to do, and then force them to break that prohibition. Nora asked what she had to do to make it happen. Her father told her to truly believe that it would happen. If she could do that, no one would look down on her anymore. A new day had come. The men came into her room and told her to get up because it was time for class. They were surprised to see that her hair had grown back. Nora said she had grown up, and then asked one of the men if he was growing at all because his brain was smaller than her younger brother's. The man got angry. The man flew up to the girl, grabbed her, and then insulted her. Another man tried to stop him because this time he was too rude. After that, Nora replied that the servants belong to all citizens, and they cannot be harmed just like that. It is normal that violators of this law are punished. The man asked her if she was really a shaman, because he was tired of laughing, and she turned to his friend and told him to get up. Her father said she did well. That was great. Nora replied that he didn't need to defend her, because she wanted to be hurt more, so that he would feel hurt too. The man asked if he could just sit and watch his daughter suffer. Besides, he didn't care how much pain she was in. He said he had been hit hard. He doubted that her action had been such a serious ban on him. Nora said she thought the curse had been made stronger by the person standing behind him. The man was related to the first, so it is quite logical that the curse fell on the one who broke the ban in front of the one for whom this ban is also important. The father admitted that his daughter scared him. She is so knowledgeable. He said the men were in such a hurry that they forgot to lock the door and asked what they would do now, adding that he could lift the curse they had placed on her. She replied that she would not run away. She didn't know yet that the laws of this country clearly defined how to communicate with servants. These rules would become her daily routine, and that was how she would be able to earn a good living. A new day has begun. We return to the main character and ask what this thing on the table is for. Paracelsus explained that she was collecting the elements of fire. Then she asked if this was the material for a magic bomb. He replied that it was. He explained how a bomb works, and said that if you heat the fuel almost to the point of ignition, fiery particles from the air will be attracted to it. This recipe is perfect for beginning alchemists, as it allows you to obtain many different elements. If you heat the air elements, they will always rise and sooner or later mix with the fire elements, no matter how hard you try to separate them. These fire elements, obtained by a special recipe, are completely pure and have no impurities. They cannot be compared with what is sold on the market. It will be difficult to ignite them without any air element. If there is no heat or magic, everything will be calm. Nora asked him about it. He had already ordered the raw materials for the bomb. To this he replied that it was just a distraction, because novice alchemists could not create pure material for a real bomb. He would simply sell the raw materials to another buyer. The girl asked if this meant he would return his money. He replied in the affirmative and added that he would get other necessary things himself so that they could earn well, but he did not offer her any help. She asked why the coin was hot, since nothing was burning in the house at the moment. To this, the main character explained that the coin was heating up on its own. Its vapor was stored in the alchemical guild, and that's where it was being heated right now. Nora said she understood why the coin remained warm even when the stove in the kitchen was off. She asked if there were really no sources of fire left in the entire house. Paracelsus apologized to her and explained that this happens when you collect a lot of materials for a bomb. She replied that it was okay. It was for the sake of earning money, and no one would die without dinner. The main character explained that in such cases, the opportunity to use fire again appears only after 3 days. Therefore, for 3 days, they either ate on the street or managed with the warmth of a coin. Ellenbick's Magic Shop. Here you can buy alchemical goods and magical items, and they also accept orders for casting magic spells. There is a snack bar on the first floor. Norin told Tottori to step aside. He added that diffusing bombs was bad for the heart. She replied that all elements were at peace while within the field of the magic seal. Norin just sighed. So much work had gone to waste. She said that Tottori had brought this bomb, so it was worth looking at the cut. The latter remarked that everything looked wonderful. A well-made thing. To this, the big bird said that it was even too well made. Norn asked Burke if he thought so too. He replied that the mixture was too pure. Humans could not have done such a thing. Tittery asked who could have done it then. The others suggested that it must be the work of the adepts. Norn said that they might not be like that, but the goods Paracelsus supplied were either made by a novice or too perfect. He tried to fool them with shoddy technology, but this time he completely gave himself away. She said that he could very well bring gifts. We need to check this out quickly. We'll have to create a ferry. Mukugan and Pochiko are to watch him at the protagonist's house. Mudrin said someone wanted to eat, so she would go and they could continue. It turned out to be Nora. She said she wanted to have lunch and take some food with her. The woman told her that she had not seen her here before. Mudrin explained that the beastmen worked here, so they did not have any meat dishes. Nora asked displeasedly if there was really only grass here. Mudian told her that the first portion would be free, and if she liked it, she could take it with her. To this, Nora replied that she loved free food. After that, the woman placed a bean burger and vegetable curry on the table in front of her. The dish gave off a pleasant aroma. Nora said it smelled delicious. She immediately stuck her fork into the dish and tried the first bite. After that, her face turned red. It was clear that she liked it. She asked to wrap the purchase so that she could take it with her. Modrin thanked her for the purchase. Nora said that it was the first time she had tasted something so delicious and without meat. The woman replied that this dish was prepared especially for those who love meat. The girl thanked her and asked if she knew where Ellenbeek's magic shop was. The wise man turned to the hostess and said that a man from Paracelsus's house had come to them. She was immediately very excited about this event. A few minutes later, Norn was going downstairs when she accidentally fell down the stairs. Norn asked if she was okay. The girl replied that the stairs and floor were made of soft materials, and added that she was pleased to meet you. The girl gave her name, and the owner also introduced herself and added that she was well acquainted with the main character. Nora said that it was not important, but she had heard from the rabbit man that educational meetings were held here. The Norn told her that luck was on her side. She could influence the fates of other people. She confessed to Nora that she adores money and is ready to do anything to achieve her goal. But at the same time, if she likes someone, she easily starts a relationship with him. She could be a match for Paracelsus. Fate brought them together. Norton said it was a kind of guessing game of character. A little bit by appearance, a little bit by personal observation. Then she asked if that was close to the truth. Norton replied that it was not at all. The hostess was asked if she could spare some time before class. Then she turned to Mudrin and said that she liked this girl and they would talk face to face. After a while, they found themselves in another room. Norn said that no one else could hear the conversations of people leaning over this tablecloth. She also added that she had invented this tablecloth herself. Nora asked her if it was magic or alchemy, to which she replied that she was using every method she knew. The girl realized that Nora was even using quite complex shamanic magic. The host explained that, using various methods from many sciences, it is possible to create walls that are difficult even for magicians and alchemists to overcome. Nora said that she would like such a tablecloth for herself, and also asked what it means to keep secrets. Norton said he wanted her to sign a magical contract in which they agreed not to tell anyone about this conversation, and not to harm each other for as long as the agreement lasted. I never thought that people in this country would consider shamanism to be some kind of magic. It always makes her angry. Do you know what a curse is? It looks suspicious. She turned to her father and said that it looked like a strange curse. She can't read the document, but she understands how the spell works from the form. Compared to the service contract method, this connection is too weak, because the spell makes it difficult for a person to psychologically reveal the secret. The girl asked if the copies of the contract were related. Norn raised her index finger and said that she was thinking in the right direction. The bonds that hold this document together are very weak. They will be easily broken. When that happens, the bonds on her copy will also disappear. She will take this as a declaration of war. She didn't even think it was a good combination of witchcraft and alchemy. Maybe it was her own invention. She agreed to sign, but said she couldn't write in that language. Then she suggested just leaving her fingerprint. Norn asked her if she had studied alchemy since coming to Paracelsus. She said yes. The hostess said she was amazed at how well she understood alchemy. The woman said that she had beautiful letters and that she would really like to see her in the group. Nora asked what they wanted to talk to her about. Norn said that people from another world had come to them, and they had special abilities. The girl immediately became wary. She thought that was bad. She should behave naturally. She was in a big mess. The host continued the conversation, calling such people those who bring gifts. During this time, she met 4 people. 2 of them were adventurers, 1 was a merchant, and 1 was an alchemist. Each of them had their own unique abilities. Nor realized that she needed to watch her face. Perhaps she suspected Paracelsus and used this conversation as an excuse. She sincerely thought that she could learn something useful. Norn turned to her assistant and said that to notice the unnaturalness of this contract, one must have the knowledge of a magician or shaman. She understood everything from the skin color and accent, but the language of the signature finally confirmed it. The hostess believed that the combination of a talented coward and a practical shaman could not be ignored. Shamans do not have the right to immediately attack the first person they meet. She had to act, knowing that a web of magic was already spread around her. In her place, Norn would have done the same. She thought about Paracelsus's fear of his powers being exposed. The hostess thought, if she were in this woman's place, she would start asking about magic to provoke a reaction, because Nora could cast a curse, erase her memory, or even kill her. She needs to think carefully before she says anything. Norin said that only 1 in 4 people tries to use their power for the good of the world. She only thought about 2 things: how not to quarrel with this woman, and how to escape as quickly as possible if a quarrel did happen. She had already done everything she could to protect her master. The girl thought that if she became an enemy of her master, she would have to die. All power was with him alone, and she would not be able to harm him in any way. At this time, Norn was watching the girl. She noticed that she was starting to calm down and seemed to be deciding what to do next. The hostess thought that perhaps some kind of murder was involved. Now Ta would not run away and would listen to everything they told her. But if she was easy to control, she would not live long. Norn told them that these powers were beyond their comprehension, and no amount of trickery would help to charge the bearers and those who received the gifts with crimes under the laws of this land. She would not allow it. If the one bringing the gifts turns out to be a villain who cannot be condemned, then, depending on the circumstances, it could kill the owner of the power himself. Nora asked her, who decides what is right and what is wrong? Would she really judge people? The landlady smiled sweetly at her and refused, then held up a book and said that civil law would judge them. Nora was shocked. Norn said that this law defines the rules that citizens of the country must follow. Thieves must pay a fine of 6 times the value of the stolen item. If a person steals a 3rd time, their hand is cut off, and for killing 3 or more people, the death penalty is imposed. Servants belong to all citizens. They are future free people, so they cannot be beaten or killed without a just cause. Anyone who cannot provide them with proper housing should not buy servants. Norn said she wanted equality for all people, so she doesn't like this law. She doesn't want servants to exist. She wants the Bismen to be recognized as equals to humans. The presenter also noted that she still respects civil law, as it emerged thanks to many lessons from the past. She promised to do everything possible as long as the prayer is heard. Norn said that even the one who brought the gifts would not be shown any mercy. If he had unjustly killed 3 people in this country, he should be sentenced to death. Nora asked Norn, confused, what she should do. The girl with glasses was looking at the table, leaning on a book. Norton began to tell her that she was looking for the owners of the gifts, watching them and checking to see if they were doing anything illegal. If one of the gifted people turned out to be a criminal, the girl would either take away their abilities or kill them herself. Nora replied that in her country, lynching was a crime, to which the alchemist said that it was the same in theirs. She added that she could not call her actions right because the girl did everything the way she wanted. The Norn placed a book with a cover in the shape of scales on the table so that the front side was turned towards Nora, and said that if she wanted to study here, she would have to master their language and civil law. Then she added that after that, she and her host must observe these laws together, because only then could true friendship arise between them. The alchemist girl confidently stated that they would not allow other people's lives to be played with as if they were toys. When they talked about the bull, Wise added that this was only possible through their corpses. Norton noted that this was exactly what she wanted to tell Nora. That was enough if she didn't need to know anything else, because she was already very eager to go home. The alchemist agreed, and added that the second thing could become a serious problem for this couple. Nern replied that it seemed that every year or 2 more givers came to their world. Nern was surprised at how often the Felties appeared. The alchemist said that even then it was not possible to say that there were too many of them in the world, and asked why. The alchemist said they had been looking for talented people for 10 years. They believed that talented alchemists and magicians were usually very lucky or popular. In addition, they were constantly watching for someone who stood out from the crowd. Norton said that almost all the prominent people disappeared or died before it was possible to determine whether they had any abilities. Some of them were seriously injured and never recovered. This news greatly disturbed Norton. Nora stood up abruptly and asked why this had happened. She explained that people could be kidnapped because of their special abilities, and added that there were many reasons to detain all suspects indiscriminately. The slave thought about these words, and wondered if this was really possible. Norn folded her hands and said she called such creatures Repuri. Nor placed her hand on her chin and wondered if they were also looking for the Reapers. The alchemist confidently replied that they were. Nor noted that if the Reaper were alone, he could be considered a dangerous recidivist who had broken almost 100 lives. In addition, they did not know how he used the taken powers, which made him an even more dangerous enemy for them. Nora understood from the conversation that the people around her and the master would not bother her if they followed the laws and simply watched over them. But these people could help in the event of a Reaper attack, so Nora decided that befriending them would increase their safety. The slave, looking at the girl across from him, thought about the flaws in their words. He thought that they wouldn't be able to prove their truth, and if they knew about the theft of powers, it meant that they had committed it themselves once, and therefore were similar to the Reaper. Nora lowered her head and thought that these people could steal her gift and claim Celsius's gift for themselves, all under the pretext of the most sacred goal, defeating the Reaper. The girl decided to herself that she would not relax, but she did not know how to proceed. Nora knew she was bad at fighting, but the girl across from her didn't seem strong either. She thought she could probably catch the alchemist off guard by simply looking into their eyes. Nora's skin felt tingly, something telling her that casting a curse for her own benefit was a bad idea, because it would inevitably backfire. A huge man entered the room and asked if anyone was here. Nora immediately shuddered, and Norn did not even look at the guest. Mudin met the man and greeted him, after which he asked for 30 healing potions. The alchemist immediately got up from the table and said that he would prepare everything now. Nora remained seated. She smiled at the girl and told her that the conversation was over for today. If there were any more questions, they could discuss them next time, although she warned that she probably wouldn't be able to answer most of them. Mudrin offered to cook something for the guest, but the man immediately refused anything without meat, and rudely told her not to even talk to him, because she smelled like an animal. The guest added that he would only come here because of their good potions, otherwise he would not have set foot there. At this, Norn forced a smile and thanked her for the purchase. While the man waited, he decided to ask if they were hiring. The alchemist replied that the potion would be delivered soon, and asked to wait a little longer, distracting him by standing at her table. Nora began to look closely at the girl. Then she picked up the plates with long tongs, and the slave thought that it would probably be better to cook the food right in the kitchen. A shepherd approached Nora and held out a box wrapped in cloth, saying that the order was ready. The girl thanked him. Larch asked if she was surprised to see the alchemist in the kitchen. While the alchemist was pouring the potion, Nora said that she found it strange to have separate workshops and kitchens, because their work was not much different from ordinary life. Even the dishes were the same. She was agreed with this. The wise woman replied that, unlike ordinary shops that simply received goods from workshops, they added magic to their potions. At this time, Norn was infusing a new batch of healing elixirs with magic. The bully suggested that Norn's dining room be closed and just turned into a pharmacy because he was tired of seeing the beast. Norn replied that everyone had different opinions, and many people thought the dining room was popular. At that moment, the man heard a noise behind him. Looking back, the thugs noticed two girls looking at them. Looking at the girls, the guest said that he understood everything, and added that she liked this job, even if it made her angry, because preparing food for the servants was her calling. The alchemist turned to the man, and the man, hearing the address, changed his view. Norn's glove flew straight into the guest's face. The girl angrily declared that she was challenging the rude man to a duel. Norn pointed her finger at the man and announced that the fight would continue until someone said, "I give up," or until it became completely impossible to continue. She added that you can fight however you want, but the time and place is here and now. The girl confidently said that if the man lost, he would definitely have to apologize to the guest. The man raised his fist and said that if it was true, he would not joke with the blow, and it was confirmed to him. Nora stood up from the table and said she wasn't offended, but Mudrin stopped her, asking her to be quiet. Nora and the thug looked at each other, not looking up. The man threw the gauntlet to the girl and agreed to fight, but he set a condition. If he won, Norn would become his slave, and he would hug her until he got tired of it. The girl caught her gauntlet. Norn asked if she could step back a little. The man waved his hands and allowed her. The girl stepped back. The man nodded towards the beastman and suggested that she join him, saying that at least they would have a fair fight. Norn refused and reminded him that the fight had to be one-on-one. The bully didn't understand why the girl was staying away, considering her simply stupid and thinking that she herself wanted to be humiliated. Magus used two methods of witchcraft. The internal method involved using mana that came directly from the magician's body. This made the spell work very quickly, but its strength depended on the amount of mana spent. This method was most often used by aristocrats and members of the royal family, as they had large reserves of mana in their blood. The external method was to take mana from everything around and control it. This allowed the mage to make his spell as powerful as he wanted, but the preparation took time. To gather mana, one still had to use the internal method, so the result depended on the mage's innate abilities regardless of the method chosen. The man stood up. It takes an experienced mage 4 seconds to cast a simple fireball spell and create a small flash of fire. This man, a martial artist, has fought alongside mages many times and knows this from personal experience. The big man looked at his opponent and knew he should be wary of devices made through alchemy or magic, but he had no idea what kind of dangerous object could fit in that small pocket. He also thought that even if the monster entered the fight, it would still be able to knock the Norn down with one blow. Smiling, the man hoped that even if the girl could continue the fight after the blow, he would still be the winner, not the loser. The bully knew that once the spell took effect, the girl would be defenseless, and then he would run up and punch her in the stomach, because he didn't want to hurt her face. The girl put her hands forward. This was a signal for the man. Rushing forward sharply, the bandit swung his fist, thinking that the girl would feel sick. Norn, as a sorceress, had one serious problem. It was difficult for her to concentrate on one thing. Miraculously, she managed to get the title of second class. She really tried to outdo other magicians, put in much more effort, but still spent as much as 20 seconds to call a fireball. After that, Norn wanted to become an alchemist, but even there she needed attention, which she lacked. Therefore, she never achieved success in this matter. After much suffering, she gave up and decided to choose only 3 spells that she would perfect. The girl continued to stretch her arms forward, absorbing mana from the air with her whole body. Second, Nor used her left hand to control the humidity and her right hand to control the temperature. In the world of magic, this had little effect, but in alchemy, it was very important. The girl gathered strength in her palm, giving the primordial substance the properties of cold and dryness. Thus the element of earth was formed, after which condensation occurred. The Norn pointed the stone forward. The man, moving forward, noticed how fast the spell was flying and how sharp the fragment was. The huge man, smiling smugly, decided that such a small thing would not scare him. The man attacked Norn's stomach. There were only a few centimeters left before the collision. Several sharp stones got stuck in the bandit's hand, which surprised the man greatly. Raising his head, the enemy saw 100 small, sharp stones flying straight at him. The man was frightened and could not understand how the spell could be cast so quickly. The room was instantly filled with light. When the primary matter is given a certain property, the reaction occurs by itself, immediately and without intervention. After waiting for Norn's reaction, she switched to the tracking technique. The girl felt both dampness and cold at once. The man stepped forward again, realizing that he could attack with renewed vigor, even despite his wounds. Water droplets rose from the ground, forming a cloud in the air. Norn aimed her hands at the thug, and a giant crater erupted from the ground, throwing him into the air. The man fell into the mud and, lying there, tried to get up. The enemy tried to concentrate, hoping that the Norn was busy with the spell and he could attack her suddenly, without seeing her through the mud that clouded his memories. The man's body was frozen to the floor, covered in ice. Brutus shouted at Norn, asking how she could cast spells continuously and who she was. The girl smiled happily. Without stopping her spell for a moment, she mentally replied that she was simply adding new properties to her spells. The Norn laughed softly, filling the spell with warmth and moisture. The girl decided that her main strength was the ability to maintain concentration without interruption. The stones began to rise into the air and move forward. The wind from the stones spun in a circle. The man could not understand what was happening. The girl mentally explained that this was her alchemical magic of the highest level, and she would not allow anyone to overtake or stop her. The hooligan asked to wait, pointing to his wounds. But the girl only pointed forward and said, "Fire." There was an explosion around the man. The giant screamed. Nora watched in horror. Nornside smiles happily and tiredly. Norn looked at the man lying on the floor, realized she had overdone it, and asked if he was still alive. Mudrin sat down next to the wounded man and replied that the man was strong and alive. Nora, frightened, hid behind an overturned table. Confused, Norn told Nora that it seemed the loser wasn't going to apologize to the girl right now. Norn decided that she should go home. As she walked back down the street, she realized that she and the owner were not equals at all. Mudrin swept the floor after the fight. Norn spread the cards on the table, read fortunes, and said that if the dragon fell to the ground, it revealed the essence of the event. If the card of the inverted elven ancestor was turned over by fire, it showed the state of thoughts. And when the last card with the skeleton with a scythe fell into the air, the future was connected with death. The girl raised the card to the corner of her lips and thought. The alchemist's hands glowed from the use of magic. The bandaged Greov woke up. The man was lying on the floor under a blanket, and when she noticed that he had come to, the woman apologized, explaining that she had overdone it a little during the duel. The girl stood up and said that she knew how to treat well, and if he would wait a little, then in 3 hours she would be able to move on her own. Greov apologized to her for having to help him, and promised to apologize to the slave later, adding that he would not swear anymore. The girl looked at him with suspicion and fear, believing that the man would kill her as soon as he could move. Greov denied this, confused. Norn, pulling on her gloves, said that in this country, attempted murder carries a 3-year prison sentence. The man didn't understand what the girl was talking about and said that you can't judge a person for something they haven't done yet, and that they agreed to. With the help of magic, a magical bow with a heart-shaped arrow appeared in the hands of the alchemist. The girl said that she would judge him. The Greeks were surprised to see the bow and arrow that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Norn, targeting the man, asked the poor man to let her save him. Greov asked the girl to stop, explaining that the defeat annoyed him, but not enough to challenge her again, and he was upset about his powerlessness. At that moment, Mudrin came up the stairs towards them. Norn looked at the boy silently, then smiled and laughed, saying that she liked to look at the expression on the face of a frightened man who considered himself the strongest. Mudrin replied in confusion that he did not understand her preferences. The girl fired an arrow, and it hit the man right in the chest. Greov looked at the arrow, looked up and saw the girl, thinking she was very beautiful. The man in Banage burst into tears when Norn asked him if Greov would be her servant for 3 years. He replied that he was ready to serve her for the rest of his life, but the girl just shrugged it off and said that 3 years would be enough for her. The girl, putting down her bow, smiled and replied that in 3 years she would raise her husband well and then let him go, while Mudrin returned one of the books to the shelf. Cupid's bow was a magical weapon that made the enemy fall in love with the archer with all his heart. The owner of this bow could shoot as many times as he wanted, but the effect of the arrow lasted only for 3 shots. When the 4th arrow was fired, the first effect disappeared. It was impossible to kill anyone with this bow. When Nora returned home, she went inside, put her bag on the table, and said she was home. Paracelsus, holding a tray in his hands, greeted the girl and showed her what he was carrying. The girl looked at the tray and asked what it was. The man replied that it was Koko's skin, and was not at all surprised by this content. Paracelsus said that he did not understand much about it, but when he placed the skin in a special growing kit according to the recipe, Koko's skin began to grow. Paracelsus happily said that Koko's body was strong and that if all went well, she would recover quickly. He added that the girl would need a lot of primordial matter. The guy looked at Nora and said they needed to think about how to collect her. Ellie lay motionless in her bed. A small creature with big eyes climbed into the room through the window and began to examine everything. The monster looked back, and at that moment the elf's hair grabbed him and began to strangle him. The girl swallowed the monster. An eagle flew in the night sky over the settlement. Burke looked down and saw Glint. The dog was standing on its hind legs and signaling to the creature. When the eagle landed, he asked how the dog was doing, and the dog wagged its tail happily and barked in response. Or he simply sat down next to the dog and asked what had happened. In response, the dog began to write a letter because he could not speak. The bundle wrote that the humanoid fairy had disappeared and had probably been captured, and that the owner was collaborating with suspicious individuals. Burke asked what had happened to Mogutan, and then the dog pointed forward with its paw and squeaked softly. The mole burrowed into the ground and moved its snout. Dory of Mogutan felt the ground, transforming his nose into little tentacles. Returning to Mogutan's eagle in his own language, Burke explained that the basement was very quiet, and whenever he touched it, he felt a sense of loss of strength. Burke realized that the alchemist was using this room to prevent information from leaking. Burke ordered the beastmen to keep an eye on the estate, but explained that they didn't have to keep a watchful eye. Their keen sense of smell would help them spot anything suspicious. If anything unusual happened, they were to contact the team immediately and report it. The eagle flew away again. As he flew alongside, Burke mentally begged his companions not to overdo it. Meanwhile, the dog and the mole had burrowed into their burrows and were sleeping soundly under the covers. Nora lay next to Koko and thought about the fact that they couldn't do anything about the Agnosia, and the girl's true intentions remained a mystery to her. The boy interrupted the girl's thoughts and asked if she was listening to him. Nora turned and asked what happened. Paracelsus happily replied that he didn't fully understand if it was related to the recovery, but Koko's hair moved and grabbed the elf's strand. Nora was surprised. Running her fingers through Koko's hair, the boy thought that the girl was touching him gently, and decided that she was using her hair like an insect's antennae to compensate for her blindness. Taking a lock of hair, the boy was delighted, and said that there were many dried insects tangled at the ends of her hair. He added that this girl catches small creatures in the room and eats them. The young man was amazed at how much Koko wanted to live, and he also said that she could move her hair. The boy was confused and said that she had an artificial spy fairy in her hair, so he realized that they were being watched. Norn thought that Agnosia could be watching them through Koko's eyes, and maybe it was Norn who was doing it. The girl sensed a strong desire for cruelty in the alchemist, but at the same time Norton adhered to the laws, organized a lynching only according to the rules, and before beating a client, challenged him to a duel. Norton seemed to be trying to remain human, adhering to her own principles. If the slave could understand what was bothering Norn, she could control her and make her an ally. But first she knew she had to go to her lessons. The man continued to examine her hair and said they needed a comb to comb out the insects, and was suddenly surprised to find an ant in the strands. Nora was silent. At night, in a strange house, Norn gave the shaman a document and asked him to use it to create a magical contract. He took the document and said that the girl was so well versed in shamanism that she could make this deal on her own. The Norn replied that only shamans chosen by the state or shamans of the highest class could cast the slave contract spell. The shaman laughed and said that she was being too formal. The girl asked if he would agree to do it, and he replied that he would take on any job, asking for a slave. The shaman cast a spell on Greov. A seal appeared on the killer's chest, and the man prepared to make a magical pact with the Norns. At home, the girl sat down with her back to Greov and turned to him. Mudrin sat down next to her. The girl, without raising her face, gave the man his first task as a slave. Norn confidently turned to her husband and told him to give her 100 lashes as soon as he could. Greov trembled and held a whip in his hands, saying that she would not be able to withstand even 100 of his blows. Norn lowered her head and replied that Mudrin heals wounds well, so she will not die after these blows. Norn said that even if it was a duel, fighting without a trial and investigation is unforgivable, and the punishment is 10 lashes. If it happens again, the punishment is increased 10 times. The man broke down and said he couldn't do it because he loved her. The girl said she knew and understood him, but that's why they needed to go through this together, because they would both have to endure the pain. Norn ordered to hit her quickly. Greov, with a look of sympathy on his face, screamed and swung. The sharp crack of a whip echoed through the room. In the corner under the stairs, the rabbit man huddled. He was trembling, his knees drawn up to his chest and his hands over his ears. The sun was shining. Paracelsus happily announced that they had all the necessary materials and even a fuse in case of danger, so now they could start making the bomb. The guy asked Nora if he and Koko could spend the night at the hotel tonight. The girl was surprised by such a request. Nora asked why, and the boy replied that he could finish the bomb himself, and if it exploded, everyone would be hurt. The girl objected that being alone was even more dangerous, and the boy reminded her that he had a safe place. The girl then asked, if there was one, then what difference did it make where they were? The boy tried to deny it. The girl abruptly sat down on the floor and confidently declared that she would stay with the guy. She also said that if he wanted to leave Koko at the hotel, he should carry her himself. Paracelsus, confused, asked her not to do that to him. The girl simply turned away and thought that the guy had lost his self-control. Nora was sure that her master did not value his own life at all, and was even ready to make a bomb. But when he saw that she and Koko were in danger, he was confused. The girl realized that she herself had turned the guy into someone who did not value life, and if anyone else had been in her place, everything would have happened the same way. Nora had an idea, and she understood that there would be no second chance like this. The girl decided that she would charm her boyfriend while he had low self-esteem, and then inspire him to try harder and help him believe in himself. Smiling, the girl realized that after her plan, all of Paracelsus's powers would be transferred to her, and laughed. The boy used his second gift. The guys with notebooks in their hands changed clothes and covered their faces with scarves. The young man suggested they start and warned her that she could run away at any moment. Nora agreed. The girl silently looked at the notebook and remembered how Norin had said that abilities could be stolen, depending on their type. Norris abruptly snatched the object from the boy's hands. Paracelsus looked at the girl with curiosity. Everything in Nora's eyes began to blur. Norris saw an old man with a beard, sitting on a throne, his robe covering only part of his body. The man greeted her and said that if she could hear him, she could now take away other people's superpowers. He also congratulated her on this ability. The man warned her to be careful if she wanted to steal them, because as soon as he finished speaking, only 3 seconds would pass in the real world, and the owner of the abilities would already try to get them back. I had no idea that this grandfather was the same one her master had spoken of. The man called himself a louse, and then the girl was convinced that her guesses were correct. Elias pointed at the girl and said that, to be more precise, it was a residual memory in the thing she stole, and this stream of thoughts was transferred to her consciousness. A notebook appeared in the man's hands, and he explained how to use it. Nora learned this from Paracelsus's explanations. He said that the previous owner of this ability was from another world and had 2 abilities at once. The man promised to thank the girl for taking away her ability and said that he would answer any question she had if he knew the answer himself. Nor didn't even ask who he was, that he could do things she had never seen anyone else do. The man just laughed. The old man began to disappear and said that he was the one who taught people how to cast spells, and he thought that this might cause a fight between them, because he could throw things harder than anyone. After that, Elias said goodbye to Nora. Paracelsus waved his hand in front of the girl holding the tablet, calling her. The girl woke up, thought, returned the magic object, and asked the boy to try to regain her powers. Paracelsus took the tablet and looked at it. Nora asked if he saw anything, but the boy said no. Nora said that she became curious when the notebook was taken away, and it seemed to her that the power had passed to her. She added that the spirit had told her how to use the object. Paracelsus was surprised by her words. The guy was outraged that his laptop could be taken so easily, and was advised to be more careful. He remembered this and suggested checking out all the new things that were being created. The slots were still taken. Nora asked if the hostess was trying to create something, and she confirmed. The young man said that when he came into this world, he immediately tried to find the recipe for immortality. But among the many necessary ingredients, he discovered 100 that he had no idea how to get. The boy realized that his power was actually weak when he overwrote the notebook with recipes that could not yet be created and got just a bunch of useless paper. Then he decided to become an alchemist's apprentice and collect other recipes. Paracelsus considered himself lucky with this power, even if he could only do what he already knew. But he hoped that the list of recipes would be reset if the owner changed. Nora grabbed the notebook again and said she didn't see any more images. The girl replied that after the new owner appeared, the notebook did not lose a single recipe, which means that it could continue to store all the dishes created. Nora glared at the boy, and in response he stared at her in surprise. Nora said his recipes were too simple and could easily be stolen by any pickpocket. The young man apologized for his carelessness. The girl asked him to summon the notebook invisibly in the future, or to hide it at the slightest danger. Then she insisted that he practice doing it after he made the bomb. Paracelsus agreed to everything. Nora warned the boy not to tell anyone about his second ability, because Elias already knew about it. The girl explained using her own example. If she tried to steal his power, then after stealing the first gift, she wouldn't be able to take the second one if the guy protected it well. And if this power could kill her instantly, then there wouldn't be any problems. Everything would be even easier. Nora added that the second power must be hidden even more carefully, because it is used very rarely. Therefore, the enemy will not dare to attack until the last. The boy understood everything, and after that the girl returned the notebook to him. The guy went back to work and said he had to make a bomb and get on one knee in front of the runes. In Paracelsus's study, many different artifacts lay on the floor. The man opened the window and let some fresh air into the room above the circle that held the magic. Then the young man poured in the right amount of oil and kneaded everything until the mixture became like clay. Next, Paracelsus attached the control panel and molded everything into a ball. He determined the amount of ingredients by eye, focusing on the strength of the recipe. At the end, the guy covered the sphere with paper to seal the magic, and once the layer was the right thickness, the first part would be ready. Then the guy got rid of the excess residue using a special spell circle, on top of which he placed a metal plate. When the boy removed the plate, the magic seal stopped working, and all the elements became normal. Then he turned the board over and got a circle of liberation that destroyed all the elements on it. This had to be done carefully. Repeating all the previous steps, but using the elements of fire and water, he donned a magic-blocking body, and the bomb was ready. Paracelsus slightly burned his hand while working with fire. The boy asked the girl to pack the bomb, because during transportation it had to be tightly wrapped in special paper that blocks magic for safety. The work continued. The young man continued to make bombs. Nora replied that she would take them to the room now, and left. The girl realized that the news had been disappointing lately, and it made her sad. As the girl walked forward, she thought about Elias, that he had taken their gift on purpose to see how they would fight. She thought of him as a child simply watching an insect fight. Nora realized that hiding would not work, but she wanted to prepare a way to escape, because the chances of survival were slim. She thought that making a deal with Nora might not be such a bad idea. The girl understood that the contract protected them from danger, but she still hesitated. She was most worried about Elias, whom Norn had mentioned, because he might attack them out of boredom. They called these questions trivial because the girl had to ask something that would give her an advantage in their childish game. She laid out the bombs on the paper with the runes. Nora ran into Paracelsus's room screaming, calling him, and he immediately responded. The joyful girl replied that after meeting the spirit, she thought about his unusual appearance and way of thinking, and it really impressed her. The boy looked at Nora with concern when she said that Elias had some special skills and was giving them away to others. Paracelsus at first thought the girl was crazy, but then he realized she was up to something. The guy replied that he also thought Elias was cool. The girl continued talking, thinking that the game would be boring if she couldn't watch the process. She had a theory that there might be some kind of spying power involved, but the question arose when this power was activated, and the girl realized that it was during use. Nora realized that if she kept praising the spirit, he might notice and give her something in return. So she kept praising him, and he awkwardly kept up the conversation. The boy got up from his seat, sighed heavily, and said that they were finished, and that tomorrow the man from Ellenbeek's workshop would come and pick up the bombs. They had been made so quickly that the boys could not get down to business right away, and then they began to get nervous and curse at her for getting in their way. Nora would not have minded if the bombs had been lying around at home. Then he would have made them right away. Paracelsus decided to check on Koko and warned the girl about it in advance. Already in Elf's room, the boy sat down and, when he opened her eyes, was surprised that the girl's gaze was unfocused. Paracelsus believed that Agnosia could not cause eye problems, but he understood that if it continued like this, the eyes would simply die and become useless. I also did not think that Koko would simply throw them away. Nora thought she wouldn't want to take anything from the person who did this to her, because she didn't know what the girl might be hiding. The guy hoped that the tears wouldn't give him away. He asked Nora to go outside with him. Already standing on Paracelsus Street, the monster grabbed the jelly, and the boy asked if Elias had told her anything else. The girl replied that she had not. The boy decided to share his opinion. He believed that if the spirit gives people strength for battles, then his strength is also needed for this. However, the young man doubted this. Elias did not like that the boy was sent to this world, because the hero did not choose fighting skills. Therefore, it could be said that there are enough people with such abilities here. The guy added that maybe Elias had something else prepared for everyone, and Nora smiled back. The girl asked how well the young man remembered what was written in the catalog, but he hesitated to answer because he was in a hurry. Nora asked him to tell her more about his abilities. The guy began to talk about 3 abilities: reading hearts, that is, people's thoughts, a magic book of the magician, where the most powerful spells are written, and a portal to the mirror world, where only the owner can enter. The guy answered uncertainly that he was unlikely to remember everything right now, because there was so much. Nora understood him. The girl said that even if there were many people with abilities, enemies might still be interested in the guy's powers, so they needed to believe they could survive. The guy happily offered to discuss it right now. The girl agreed but said she preferred to do it in her room. Paracelsus replied in confusion that together they would come up with something faster, and Nor said that living next to a person who could read minds was very exhausting. The girl advised them to think it over carefully in private, to talk about it tomorrow, and wished the host good night. At this, the young man said goodbye to her. Nora stood by the bed and closed her eyes. The girl managed to separate. Astral projection was surprised by her skill. Usually ordinary people lose consciousness, but Nora remained conscious. The girl never thought that she would one day use the technique she had trained for so long for such eavesdropping. The girl asked if they could read her mind if she used the astral plane. The monster dad standing behind her said he didn't know, but they could definitely kill her if she couldn't move. Nora replied that this was where the monster would come in handy, and asked if he could take over her body. The monster dad understood everything and fulfilled her request. Monster dad, looking at his hands and the girl's body, said that he had already forgotten how difficult it was to be in a physical body. Nora, appearing as a projection, warned him to watch his words and asked him to immediately take over her body if there was even the slightest danger. Nora added that it was important for them to practice doing it quickly and effortlessly, and also warned that at this time the girl would be making up something. When the moment came, the monster father should act as usual, and the monster said that they could rely on him. Norris said that when they met the psychic, they could easily confuse him and catch him by surprise. The monster father noted that the girl had come up with a very cunning plan, and the projection added that this way they would definitely come across a mind reader. Meanwhile, Paracelsus sat on the floor and reread the recipe for making weapons. The guy realized that simple weapons wouldn't help him, because in battle they wouldn't give him an advantage against an enemy with fighting skills, although it was still worth arming himself. Paracelsus lay on the floor, confused and unable to understand what to do next. In the morning, the girl drew on the ground and asked Paracelsus to do the opposite of what she said. Nora drew a circle and warned that this would be her territory. Nora asked him not to enter the circle, hoping that the guy would do the opposite. Paracelsus, after thinking about it, nevertheless entered the circle. She asked how he was feeling, and the boy replied that he felt disgusted when he went where he wasn't invited. The girl said that this would be the cause of the curse. Nora explained that she had cast a curse circle that intensified the curse's effect and made it difficult for enemies to enter. If someone tried to enter, the curse would strike at the mind and body, and if strong emotions were also put into it, it could become deadly. The girl also added that it was not a direct attack, but it was very difficult to fight such a curse. Paracelsus listened carefully to the girls. Nora added that their enemies might be shamans, and promised to tell them more about the curse later. The boy agreed with her. Paracelsus looked resolutely at the girl, called her by name, and she responded. The boy took Nora by the hand and promised to protect her and become stronger. The girl was embarrassed and hesitantly agreed, until suddenly guests arrived at the house. Mudrin came to the boys with a rabbit. Paracelsus greeted them, and the beastmen repeated after him. Paracelsus said that he had been waiting for them and that the bombs were ready. The rabbit was surprised that the craftsman had made them in just 2 weeks, to which Paracelsus laughed a little confusedly. The rabbit listened, tapping the bomb wrapped in a rag, and said that the quality was simply excellent. The rabbit apologized for distracting the boy, but warned him that he would have to walk twice to carry all the bombs. The spider replied that they should wait anyway, because he needed to talk to Norn. Paracelsus, having already changed clothes at home, asked for a notebook. The guy hid the notebook behind his back and replied that the size was perfect. Nora entered the room and asked what kind of clothes they were. The guy replied that he remembered a piece of good fabric that had been lying idle for a long time, and decided to sew a self-defense suit from it. The boy replied that such a suit did not measure temperature and immediately began to behave according to the heat. Paracelsus prepared a similar suit for Nora. The girl thanked the boy but reminded him not to forget about rest. The boy pointed to his chest and said that he had made a plate of mithril here to protect the vulnerable spot, and underneath it a holder for a notebook. Nora examined the plate carefully. Nora decided to ask why this guy needed Norn. Paracelsus replied that he wanted to ask her to hide who was making this product. The girl looked at the boy and told him to be careful on the road, and the boy smiled at her in return. Paracelsus took the cart, surprising Murin, and asked the boy if he really carried bombs. The young man replied that physical education had never hurt anyone. Nora watched from the sidelines as the monster father asked her if she would really let the boy go that easily. The girl mentally replied that she couldn't do anything anyway, and wanted to show how far her master was from murder. But in her heart, Nora was still worried about her master. Nora put her hand on her chest and pulled out a hair. The monster father asked who did it. Nora replied that she did it to the Norns. The girl's face changed. She became angry. Nora replied that if the boy did not return, she would hide and put a deadly curse on Norn. The monster looked at the girl in fear. The monster father asked her not to switch places with him when the girl was standing next to Paracelsus, because he didn't know what face to show him. And Nora told him not to complain, because now he was a part of her. In the town square, Paracelsus stood next to Phantom and suddenly felt nauseous. He made excuses that he had never moved so much before. Mudrin supported the boy. The rabbit suggested leaving the boy here, but Modrina replied that he needed to be protected. The boy was trying to catch his breath and realized he needed to practice endurance. Suddenly he heard a voice addressed to him, and Parcells turned forward to look. When the fountain threw him away, a face appeared on the skull. This meant that the boy had extraordinary abilities. Paracelsus was very scared and tried to scream, but suddenly he was grabbed and dragged under the water. The rabbit heard the noise and approached the fountain, asking what Paracelsus was doing. Mudrin asked what had happened while the rabbit was looking at the fountain and said he had heard the splash of water, but he had never seen the man. Mudrin asked the rabbit to move away, dipped her finger in the water, and then licked it. The girl replied that it tasted like dead human flesh. The rabbit asked if it tasted like Paracelsus, to which the wise one replied that its owner had died a few days earlier, and added that the situation was an emergency, ordering him to tell his mistress everything. The rabbit understood everything and ran away. Mudrin realized that if anything happened to the boy, Nora's wrath would fall upon them, so she wrote a warning on a tablet for her comrades about Paracelsus' disappearance. Paracelsus was lying on the ground and a figure stood before him. The man with the bony face called himself the Dark Knight, took up his sword, and ordered the boy to answer his questions. Paracelsus stared in horror at the man in the cloak. Dark Knight said that the boy was bringing gifts from another world, and the young man agreed. The man pointed his sword at Paracelsus and ordered him to tell about his abilities, and then give them to him if he wanted to stay alive. The guy turned around. Deep in his thoughts, the boy realized that after he fell into the fountain, everything suddenly became quiet. People disappeared somewhere, and then he realized he found himself in another world. The Duck Knight laughed, and Paracelsus realized that all this water was just a superficial movement possessed by the man across from him. Paracelsus believed that one of the Dark Knight's powers was not related to combat, and he was not sure if this ability was as powerful as the others. He wondered what the power of displacement was. The young man asked what guarantee he had of returning alive if he gave up his powers. To this the man replied that it was a stupid question because there was no guarantee. The Dark Knight replied that in such a situation the boy should simply trade his powers for his life, and added that he would make a decision based on the boy's behavior. The boy expressed his indignation at the Dark Knight's attitude. The boy trembled and said he did not know this man, demanded to return him to the previous world, otherwise he would turn the enemy into ashes. The Dark Knight replied that the boy's power was in his recipes. Paracelsus was stunned by how much his enemy knew and could not understand where he had learned it all. The Duck Knight reminded the boy of how he had prepared medicine for his sick grandmother, and simply took out his notebook, having no ulterior motives. The man began to poke the boy with his sword, saying that he could not turn him into coal, and asked what his second power was. Paracelsus tried to protect his head from the blows of the enemy. The young man grabbed his sword and said he could not give up his power, but offered to make a deal. Paracelsus advised doing everything possible for the boy, as long as it was not used for evil. The young man asked to be taken away from here, because if he was killed now, the enemy would achieve nothing. The Duck Knight laughed and asked if he really dreamed of a heroic death, then summoned an army of zombies from the ground. The guy turned around and was very surprised to see a crowd of zombies. The rebels from underground tried to grab the boy, but he fought back and pushed them away. The zombies knocked him off his feet and rushed after him. The boy screamed in pain that he was dying, but the man calmly replied, "For now, they were just playing with him." The Dark Knight replied that if he didn't listen to him, the boy would really get hurt. Paracelsus could rise when the army stopped, and then the enemy asked to transfer his abilities to him. The boy, crying, replied that he would obey him. The man ordered him to bring the notebook, but the man replied that it was already in his pocket, and, taking out a coin, offered to keep it for himself. The Dark Knight asked what it was, and the boy showed a magnet and replied that it was a means of communication that was given upon joining the Alchemist Association. The young man pushed her into the plywood, while voicing his actions, and then the man asked what would happen next. The coin fell into the water, and the boy dove in, uttering the word steam. Everyone was stunned. The fountain exploded. The guy managed to duck before everyone else, so he wasn't thrown around like the others. Paracelsus leaned his hand on the fountain, while all the others fell to the ground along with the drops of water. Rising from his chair, Paracelsus was surprised that everything had worked. He thought, if he followed the recipe, he could really make water turn into valerian, and then into steam. The boy staggered forward, thinking that the Dark Knight was not trying to kill him. However, he managed to knock his opponent out of the game, but he hoped that he would not die because if that happened, he would have to stay in this world forever. The guy fell because he felt dizzy after the explosion. At home, Nora was sitting at the table having dinner when suddenly the bell rang, announcing the arrival of guests. The girl opened the door, thinking that Paracelsus might have forgotten something. Lexa stood in front of Nora, covering her with himself, and wished the girl a good day. Nora froze in surprise. The girl mentally ordered her monster father to change and went shopping in the astral, not even suspecting that Elias would appear so quickly. The girl had previously spoken to her father about the clairvoyant and assumed that he could only know something superficial about other people's thoughts. The monster father asked her why she thought that. The girl replied that otherwise the reader might attack immediately and spoil the monster's interest in the game. Nora thought that the spirit loved flattery, so it might appear soon. So the girl began to think in advance how to deal with him, because she believed that the old man also had a difficult way of thinking. Her father was irritated by the endless guesses. Nora told her father to think only of Elias. After the girl asked the old man about his powers and knowledge, because she was genuinely curious, her father asked in surprise if Nora sometimes wanted to kill the old man. The girl replied that this was one of the options. The main thing now is to find out more about his words, and only then somehow embellish them. They say that the father should not worry about this, but she replied that as soon as he had any extra thoughts, they should immediately exchange them. The father asked what he should do if he asked to stay with him for the night. She advised him not to accept the offer right away, but to first talk about his value, and only after some time decide what to do next. The monster father didn't believe he would have to share a crayon with a spirit. The girl replied that closeness could help establish a connection and learn the enemy's weaknesses, but the father couldn't agree to such a thing while in his own daughter's body. Nora replied that perhaps he didn't do it, but because of his weakness, his daughter could die, and there would be nothing left in life but inconvenience. Returning to the present, the father in his daughter's body greeted Elias with all honors. The girl asked what Elias was doing here. Elias replied that he had a free moment, and decided to go in. He asked if she was surprised, and the girl's father said that he was very surprised by the arrival of a guest, and everyone laughed. The girl stepped away from the door and said she was helping with the tea, inviting them to come in. Nora, while in the astral, told her father to welcome the old man well. Her father smiled through the force. At Alan Bix's magic shop, Norn told him that Pochiko saw a living dead man near Paracelsus's house, holding meat wrapped in cloth. The girl placed and unrolled the cloth where the deceased's hand had been, and said that it was a part of the deceased's body. Mudrin asked if there was a way to control the dead. Norn replied that such a technique does exist, but it is very complex, and many people do not even suspect that they are interfering with it. In addition, this technique is considered a forbidden curse. Looking at Norton's hand, she said that the more people live in a city, the harder it is to use such magic, which is why it is considered rare. And considering that Paracelsus ended up here, we can assume that this is the work of a master who possesses this gift. The girl told Zierman to stop following them and start looking for everyone except Colic. Barrow agreed to this order. Norn was worried and his thoughts turned to Paracelsus. Paracelsus lay by the ruined fountain. The guy started to wake up, tried to get up and wipe the dirt from his face. The young boy saw the Dark Knight nearby, but couldn't understand why he didn't remember his abilities. Suddenly someone grabbed the boy by the leg. Paracelsus escaped the zombie's grasp once again, and the Dark Knight rose with the dead, saying that he had destroyed the bodies he had spent so long collecting. The man looked sternly at the young man and said that he would never forgive him for this. The Dark Knight ordered the hero's leg to be torn off, and this greatly surprised and frightened Paracelsus. His zombie skull lay just a few centimeters from the boy's leg. The dead man's skull suddenly caught fire, and this frightened the boy greatly. Two girls standing behind the house asked the boy if he was okay and called him in. Paracelsus crawled towards them, but as soon as the Dark Knight ordered the zombie to follow him, he suddenly ran away. One of the girls began to cast a spell, while the other prepared to defend. The sorceress threw a fireball at the zombie. The fireball grew larger and flew forward. The bullet blew up one zombie who was standing next to the main enemy. As all three of them fled, the boy looked back, and the girl with the sword and shield shouted that now was not the time to look back. The girl defended herself from the zombie with a sword, pushed him away and pierced him through. The guys ran away, and Paracelsus decided to find out who they were. The boy asked to answer his question, but was immediately silenced. The Dark Knight's scream was heard from behind. The man shouted after them that they couldn't get out without him, and this already showed that he had won. The heroes ran to the castle. Paracelsus sighed, tired from running, and wiped the sweat from his face. The man cast a protective spell and lit up the sky with a bright light. The other girls shouted that they had returned and began to lower the ladder towards them. The girl led the boy forward and ordered him to stand up. The boy obeyed her, while she held back the advancing group of zombies. The boy approached two girls, one of them aiming at a zombie. The girls were surprised when the boy greeted them. The girl with short blonde hair led the boy to the door, while the other called the rest to wake up. Paracelsus went down the stairs with the girls and looked around. The boys also went down into the corridor and silently walked forward. The girl smear introduced herself to Goldie and said that she was a clever witch. Paracelsus also gave his name and shook her hand. Goldie introduced him to the girl next to him. It was her knight named Sylvia. Sylvia said that she used to be an ordinary city girl without a job, and greeted the guy. The magician introduced the others, saying that the archers were named Violetta and Rosa, and the other two were Lilia and Dahlia. He added that there were more people in the team, but only these 6 were ready for battle. Goldie said they were kidnapped to fulfill the Dark Knight's dream. Paracelsus asked what dream he was talking about, and the girl replied that the man was dreaming of a heron. Goldie, pressing herself, said that she had been trying to erase the makeup she had worn all week, and regretted that he had chosen her. She added that she was strong and beautiful. The young man argued about the magical seal of wizards and the fact that the girl did not have one. Goldie asked why he had disappeared here, what he had been talking about with the Dark Knight. Goldie ordered him to tell the truth, and her knight drew her sword and aimed it at the man. At that moment, when the blade was nearby, the boy said that the spirit had given him 2 gifts, and the Dark Knight wanted to take them away, talking about his powers. The boy lied a little because he was afraid of girls. Sylvia said that if the boy stayed alive, the Dark Knight would become stronger, and offered to kill him. The boy got scared and started to retreat. Goldie said it could be done, but the guy could get rid of them himself thanks to his abilities, and then she would treat him better. Paracelsus said he was not their enemy, and offered that if they would take him in, he would help defeat the Dark Knight. Sylvie stood guard. Sylvia stepped on the boy and hit him with her shield. Paracelsus was lying on the ground, and the girl held a sword at him and asked who he thought he was. Sylvia replied that they had been surviving in such conditions for a whole year now, thanks to the help of locals and those who died by stepping on the boy. The girl, already screaming, asked how he could possibly help them if he himself had just escaped from a zombie. In response, the boy apologized. Sylvia lowered her sword and simply walked away. Goldie apologized to Paracelsus. The girl asked how to break through the darkness of the night. The young man replied that if they joined forces, they would find a way out and wipe the blood from his face. The girl asked to tell more about the second force, but the guy refused, saying that it was his main trump card. Goldie asked again. Paracelsus replied that if this was a prerequisite for joining them, then he would rather go fight the zombies himself. The girl resigned herself and, as she left, suggested that they work together. She said that although he would remain under surveillance, she would bring him food and he would no longer have to go up to the second floor. Paracelsus silently watched the girl leave. When night fell, the boy sat on a bench and thought about the lies he had told, supposedly for the good of the world. He realized that if he disappeared without a trace, he would become an enemy to the girls. The boy thought that he had gotten into trouble and that he shouldn't lie to people so much. Upset, he covered his face with his hands, and a projection of Nora appeared next to him, assuring him that he had done everything right. The boy replied that this was exactly what Nora herself would have said, remembering the girl. The boy, seeing the girl in front of him, jumped in surprise and exclaimed. The girl told him to calm down, explaining that she only existed in his imagination. The girl replied that she could look like that because of the real Nora, and the boy thanked her and asked how she was doing. She said that she only knew what her master knew. Paracelsus raised his head and wondered if Nora was okay. And at this time the girl was sitting at home, trembling all over, naked and covered in blood, and growling quietly. A few hours before the battle, a rabbit ran through the alleys to Paracelsus' house. The rabbit didn't understand why he was running for so long and couldn't find the boy's house, because he should have found it long ago. Meanwhile, Elias told the girl about his powers, saying that he had an unbreakable exchange and rays that could destroy everything. He wondered if there was anything stronger than that. The man said that when strong opponents face each other in a fight, it becomes very exciting. He admitted that he gave his all to win, and added that it was really interesting. The girl tried to hide her excitement, but she did not stop smiling. Nora noticed that the old man's hologram had been telling 6 of his stories for an hour, with her dad listening intently, and she thought that she definitely couldn't do it that way. The girl noted that the idea of giving people from another world powers and attracting aliens to her world was quite interesting. The man noticed the compliment, and Nora agreed, wanting to please Elias. The girl replied that they didn't invent magic. It was Elias who allowed them to use it, and added that he was their ancestor. Elias liked these words, and he said that the girl seemed to read his mind. The man began to talk about the limitations of humans, such as fear, talent, morality, and imagination. He added that he had originally given humans unlimited magic so that they could be free, creating and destroying entire worlds. Elias sadly thought that people can be stupid, and he wished there were more competitions. The girl asked if Elias knew anything about curse magic, said that she was a shaman herself and had read that magic and curses were not the same thing. The man replied that he knew about such role-playing games, and added that people make up their own stupid rules. The man called Kerr's words foolish, which angered Nora's father greatly, and he challenged the spirit to a duel. The man looked at the girl with interest, and the projection silently watched everything that was happening. The girl said that his strength of spirit was truly impressive, and that she, as a person, could not match him at all. The father, using Nora's body, explained that he wanted to show curses should not be underestimated, because their power can be comparable to that of a human. The girl suggested that she be hit once and asked permission to do so. Ali asked the girl what she wanted for winning. She replied that she would be happy with just praise, and the man laughed. Norris was surprised at how skillfully her father controlled his anger, and was able to turn the situation around so politely. They realized that they could only survive now thanks to this situation, and if they won, they would destroy the spirit, and they were amazed at the treachery of the adults. The man agreed to her proposal and replied that if she didn't manage it, she would have to listen to his chatter forever, after which he installed a protective shield. Elias warned that this barrier would not let anything through until he himself allowed it to. The man raised his fingers and they lit up. He explained that it was a ray, and if she didn't obey, he would point it at her and burn her. The girl accepted this. The heroine asked who would listen to him if he destroyed her. Then the man realized that he had made a mistake. The spirit changed its behavior and said that it would use a needle from the catalog, number 43, which would work like a charm for 24 hours. It also added that even curses without magic would have no effect. The girl stepped back in fear and asked what kind of power it was. Elias replied that it was useless to run through the needle. The needle pierced the girl's chest. The girl fell off her chair and writhed in pain. Elias laughed, saying that this was enough to win, and looked at the girl. The man asked excitedly how she was doing and if she was in much pain. The girl sat up and laughed. The father, while in Nora's body, said that they drank tea together, which he had prepared himself, talked for a long time, and even agreed to a duel. That's how a connection appeared between them. The needle pierced Elias's chest, and this greatly surprised the man, as he had thought the magic of the ceiling would protect him. The men could not understand how the girl was able to use his power, and thought that she had done it before he attacked her. The girl replied that this power was only given to her for temporary use, and that he had harmed himself. The spirit could not understand anything. The girl replied that she initially thought that since Elias was a being separated from her physical body, the curse would not work. But she still had a lot of feelings for the spirit. Although the girl was still scared, the girl explained that he was still a little afraid of the curse, so he immediately used his power to neutralize it. This made him a predictable opponent and allowed her to attack with the curse. The man replied that she had tried well. The girl added that now he would not be able to remove the spell. The heroine pointed her finger at Elias and added that until he learned to control magic, it would be impossible to remove the needle. smiling and joking about his once so praised boundless magic. The father added that both the beam and the barrier were powerful skills, just as valuable as the skill that gave the other abilities. The man began to worry. The father said that these 3 skills were enough to do many different things, and he was confident that he could handle the enemy. So he asked Nora not to worry. The girl was talking about Elias's words, which said that humans are pitiful creatures who do not use their power to the fullest and can only destroy. The man opened his mouth in fear. The girl changed her look to a gloomy and angry one and asked what the man could do now. The girl assumed a fighting stance and thought she would jump up now. The man was glad that the skills that had been activated in advance could be used, but she still didn't understand what had happened to her and how her appearance had changed. Elias pulled a knife from under his robe and tried to stab the girl as she jumped. Nora's clothes disappeared and she got stuck on the ceiling. The man was surprised at how she jumped and said she shouldn't jump so high. The girl slowly turned her head 120 degrees towards the man, hoping that the enemy would be frightened and lose vigilance. The girl had another eye, and although the man's attack turned against him, he still tried to strike back, because of her curse, any attack would return to him. But still he did not stop and tried to kill the girl with a knife. Nora did not understand whether he was just stupid or had the ability not to die even if he was cut in half. So while there was a chance, it was better not to attack him. Dodging the attack, the girl thought that the man could not use the new magic with the needle, but she was sure that he had the one he had already shown, and she needed to find it. Nora understood that she had little time while the needle was working, and if the spirit turned on the barrier, she would die. Meanwhile, Nora snatched the earphone from his ear. After the girl took the item, she saw a projection of the man she had seen earlier when she was taking the notebook from the owner, and he said that this was how she would die. Nora asked for the projection to bring her back faster, and the man agreed, reducing everything to 1 second. The girl hid behind the fireplace, realizing that it was dangerous. If he hadn't imagined this, it would have been over for her by now. The herbs the girl added to the tea and the incense she lit while drinking showed her husband another side of her that she had tried to hide. Nora didn't expect it to work, but Elias, weakened by the needle, gave her a chance, and she had to win. The girl understood that the effects of the incense and tea would soon wear off. The double helped her attack, but Nora reasoned. She didn't know when the old man would get rid of the needle, so she had to act right now and go on the attack. Nora recognized that the spirit existed before humans, but she considered it a parasite and was sure that it would bring only misfortune to its owner. She was determined to see the matter through and kill this man. Nora punched the man in the face and mentally apologized to her father for dragging him into this, and asked for a little help. The father responded by saying that he was happy to help his daughter. Even if he was already dead, he was ready to show his strength and tear the enemy apart. The girl hit the man a second time, this time with her foot. The double angrily lunged forward and scratched the spirit across the face, but the man managed to swing his sword. The joyful grandfather said that he had hit the target. The double lost his right arm and received a cut on his chest. The accomplice shouted to Nora that the two were going to attack, and this surprised the man. Norm grabbed Elias's hand. The girl quickly plunged the blade into the man's chest, and he only sighed softly. Earlier, the girl had asked her father if he could go into her slave room, but her father did not understand what she meant. At that time, the spirit entered her seal. Nora winced in pain, felt her father pull her hair, and as she went inside, she said there was plenty of room. But somewhere deep down, Nora knew. The curse on the slaves should not be touched. Part of the opening revealed that all the walls of this room were made of leather and showed a small piece of the incision. She hoped that would be enough. Her father asked if she was okay, and she said yes. Nora asked if he could master it, to which his father replied that he could, and climbed inside the skin. A vague shadow appeared in the hole, and part of the hole replied that before the battle began, it would hide the necessary things somewhere nearby, so that its father could hide there at the right moment. Its father said that he would be a decoy for it, and Nora suggested that he train with her. Now Nora took the blade and entered the man's projection again, but the spirit said it had important business and immediately sent her back. The girl returned. Her father warned her to be careful, and you replied that you should get rid of the sandals too. On the floor lay an enemy with a hole in his chest. Nora swung her sword. Ilya complained about her legs, and her dad said it wasn't a big deal, and asked if she was going to get another haircut. To which she replied that she would probably need to get another haircut just in case. The girl cut the man's body into 5 parts. Tired and out of breath, Nora took Elias by the head. The girl began to recite a spell so that the man's soul could rest peacefully and not turn into an evil spirit. I want to get rid of the body as soon as possible. Nora tried to calm down as quickly as possible, but her dad was there and said that no murderer would bury someone in such a hurry, so there was almost no chance of falling asleep peacefully. The old man with the mutilated and severed head spoke and said that he would not sleep. The girl stepped back, and the man continued to say that he hated sleeping more than anything in the world. Because while he was asleep, something interesting could happen, and he would be sorry if he missed it. She quickly jumped away from the speaker, smiling. The grandfather replied that he didn't like being told to go to sleep, and rejoiced, calling the girl a good boy, and then cut his own throat. The spirit created a protective barrier. The man smiled and explained the girl's words about his 3 skills, which he had only used for 100 years. He replied that in reality, 2 would be enough for him. After that, he called up a secret catalog of cheat skills and a regular catalog from which he could choose any power for himself. Grandpa began to recover, and 4 tentacles grew from his head. He explained that there was another ability in the secret cheat catalog, a recovery device. Thanks to this skill, the spirit could grow a new body, and a puppet-like doll appeared in its center. The girl froze in horror, and the man calmly declared that his magic, unlike human magic, was almost inexhaustible. The spirit returned to its previous body, but immediately became 3 times larger than the girl and said that it could do the same. The man said he had removed the obstacle for her and suggested they attack one by one, suggesting she strike first. Nora understood. That was it. The end. She definitely wouldn't be able to win. Nora thought that even if she attacked him with a knife, he would still recover. And even if she restrained her attack, he would also be able to recover. But in the end he would die. Only she would remain. The father. I replied that he did not have the strength to control her body, and he asked his daughter for forgiveness. The enemy declared that although he could not be defeated, he was also afraid of being wounded, but now he would fight properly. The saddened man asked if the girl had given up yet, and added that he could do nothing to help. With a wave of his hand, he said goodbye to her. Suddenly, a rabbit came running to the girl's aid, swung, leaned against the ceiling, and hit the man. The rabbit hit the enemy right in the face, and this surprised the girl very much. Nora tried to remember the rabbit's name, to which he replied that his name was Tutori. He also said that he had heard a little about this situation from afar, and asked what kind of creature it was. Nora replied that it was a monster. Nora began to explain to the rabbit that only what the man himself allows can pass through the barrier, and if he gets even the slightest wound, the device in the middle of his chest will immediately restore his protection. After that, he will instantly hit us with a beam of light, and we will die. At this moment, the spirit noticed that the man had become much larger, and then began to shrink. The man wiped his face, restraining the beast within him, and said that this was just an alchemical mistake of humanity. The enemy pointed at the rabbit and asked if he was not ashamed to live at all, because he had taken on all the worst from both people and animals. He repeated again that the rabbit disgusted him. Then the man suddenly remembered that he had come to the hole with an important message, and said that he would definitely tell it if they survived. The rabbit said that Alanvik's store is not the enemy of the city, and he will prove it by getting her out of here, even if he has to risk his own life. The enemy asked how he would pull it off on his trembling legs, and asked him not to pretend to be a man. It was no wonder to the enemy that he was afraid, because he was a herbivore. If he ate grass and ran away from predators, then he was simply living up to his appearance. Suddenly, the rabbit jumped back sharply. Totori replied that he felt worthless because he couldn't hit a rabbit like him. Elias tried to hit the rabbit with the beam again. The enemy continued to shoot the beam, and the rabbit jumped and thought that he was completely exhausted and had almost no chance of victory left. The man noticed that the rabbit had started moving faster, and asked if he was too fast as the man-beast jumped around the room. Totori recalled a conversation with Norm Ko, who said that beastmen had abilities that ordinary humans or animals did not have. He had this power during a fight with a strong opponent when he was very scared. Totori thought only about escape and felt fear. It seemed that the rabbit was no longer jumping, but simply surrounding the enemy. The rabbit remembered how he was happy with his innate ability and thanked the alchemists who created it. To this, Norn replied that it was only a recently discovered feature, and not everyone has it. During the fight, the rabbit was so scared that in fear it accelerated to incredible speed. Totori shouted at the monster to see what they were capable of. The enemy replied that it was impossible to defeat him in this way, because no matter how much they tried to get through his barrier, no one would be able to do it. The enemy was still trying to say something when suddenly the rabbit broke through the defense and with the hand of a spirit from the past hit the man in the face, so hard that his eye fell out. The enemy was surprised by the cunning of the beastman. The girl saw that the man's body had begun to recover, and simply cutting off his head was no longer enough. Nora shouted to Totori to aim at the hull, because if it was him, everything would definitely work out. The humanoid beast ripped the man's heart out of his chest along with the magic object. The girls won and took home the trophy. I sharply cut the heart and the magic item in one motion. The girl wanted the monster to die, and pushed the artifact away with her hand. The heroes fell to the floor, exhausted. The room was destroyed. The girl stood up and walked over to Beast's skin, asking if he was okay. Suddenly, a beam appeared behind Nora and cut her hand. The girl turned around. The girl was in despair from the horror she saw. The enemy completely changed and said that even without the artifact he would not die, because he was immortal. Nora was wounded by Lord. She felt intense pain and, weakening, sank to the floor. Blood flowed slowly, leaving traces, and the world around her faded, becoming alien and empty. The monster shouted loudly that the girl could not use her magic in archery. Desperation and powerlessness made it difficult for him to think, so he decided to attack, bite his enemies, and then rest for a while. His father shouted at the top of his lungs, ordering Nora to move faster, and immediately felt his heart freeze with fear. Just then, splinters began to fall from the ceiling above them, quietly and slowly at first, but it quickly became an alarming sign of danger. This was Koko. She had transformed into a real monster, preparing to show her strength to her enemies, and at the same time protect those who love her. Fire flashed from the girl's eyes. She tensed all her muscles, gathered her last strength, and with all her human strength, she stuck her hair straight into Hermes' chest, piercing it through and through. And then, very tired, she suddenly fell from the ceiling and lost consciousness while still in the air. His father understood well that Koko's soul was trapped not by a simple curse, but by a strong rage that had become something greater. It was this force that made her body move forward, no matter what. The cup suddenly slipped off the edge of the table, flew through the air, and fell onto the tiles with a loud crash, cracking the edge. The maid asked Agnosia if anything important had happened. Agnosia replied that she had only one true friend. Hearing this, the maid remembered her mistress and thought that her friend was a poor girl. The woman said that the girl was too kind. Even when she was constantly being used for her own interests, she still laughed happily. But the girl advised, you should also be angry with bad people sometimes. So every day she prayed earnestly for the girl, asking the gods to give her the strength to stand up for herself before her abusers. Finally, after many years of waiting, her prayers were heard. The maidservant came closer and sincerely congratulated her mistress on this important event. Agnosia sat there, barely holding back tears of joy. For the first time in a long time, her friend had noticed her own shortcomings, and for the first time, had truly become angry at the actions of another person. Totori carefully observed the strange events, and mentally decided that he was facing some unknown monster. Although he did not understand at all what was happening, Nora told the guests that the mysterious creature was their ward, Koko, whom they had sheltered and rescued, but no one could explain why the girl had undergone such terrible changes. However, everyone understood that Koko was unlikely to become their enemy. Tori carefully bandaged the girl's injured severed arm, promising that she would be given full assistance later. Then he sighed and added that he would like to relieve her of the pain now. But there was one important detail that complicated the situation. The rabbit carefully took her hands and quietly asked her not to worry, explaining that Paracelsus had been treacherously kidnapped. He strongly advised the girl to first gain strength, restore her health, and calm down, and only then promised to tell her in detail about all the details of the mysterious event. Nora screamed Koko's name as loud as she could, hoping the girl would hear her, because Koko herself was sitting still and could barely move. The slave girl screamed in panic that her master had been kidnapped and began to beg for immediate help. Totori tried to calm her down, persistently asking her to wait a bit and not to rush into action, but to wait for the right opportunity. The elf, who had frightened the rabbit with her sudden movements, quickly regained control of herself and briskly moved towards the attractive call. Nora resolutely jumped onto the back of the transformed Koko and turned to the frightened guest, with a request to quickly show where their master had been kidnapped. The spirit of her father was left alone in a strange body, feeling a strong sense of anxiety and loneliness. Paracelsus pondered for a long time how Norison would react to this news, imagining what emotions and thoughts would overwhelm her in such a difficult situation. Fake Nora seriously explained that they now had two complex problems that needed to be solved quickly. She added that the first problem was the zombies. If this was indeed the power to control the dead, then no matter how many were destroyed, the Dark Knight could always create new ones, and he would never run out of this ability. So it was better to conserve his strength and hide. The young man realized that the situation looked hopeless. The second problem is the power of the mirror itself. Even if the zombies disappear or are neutralized, the main danger will still remain. If the Dark Knight escapes from such a difficult situation, everyone else will remain in the mirror world forever. If he decides that he does not need their abilities, then he will not be able to get out either. If he manages to escape, then until he wants to free them, everyone else will remain imprisoned forever. Paracelsus wondered why their enemy didn't simply unleash an endless stream of zombies to increase the undead onslaught and decide the outcome of the battle more quickly. False Nora suggested that the enemy probably had their own reasons for not resorting to such a plan. The Dark Knight said he wanted to take the boy's abilities away, and until he agreed to give them back, let him have fun in this world among the zombies. He also warned that he would return in 3 months. Nora remembered that this was exactly what he had said during their first meeting with the Master. The boy thought that the enemy could not directly control the zombie. Since the enemy was far or completely out of this world, the young man first wanted to understand why he was interested in his skills. At the time, it seemed like a threat, but it was clear that every decision could be dangerous. The interlocutor emphasized that one should not rush at the enemy with shouts of readiness, but rather keep one's strength secret and use it at the most crucial moment to increase the chances of success. Paracelsus added that he did not intend to stay here forever. He was struck by the wisdom of this young woman. Her balanced words helped him finally feel relief, gave him confidence and peace, and dispelled the anxiety and restlessness that had been building inside. Nora modestly admitted that she had only briefly occupied a small corner in her mentor's thoughts, emphasizing that truly brilliant ideas belonged only to him. Her sincere words caused the boy genuine embarrassment, but at the same time brought him joy and warmth. The young man quickly realized that this vision was not a real girl at all, but only a reflection of his own dreams and hopes. Realizing that all the nice words were just a figment of his imagination, he felt embarrassed and very ashamed of his strong emotional reaction. Nora calmly expressed the opinion that the owner simply needed warm words of support from a loved one, and there was nothing shameful in such a desire. Looking intently at his interlocutor, Paracelsus firmly decided to continue relying only on his own intelligence and common sense. The girl concluded by saying that Nora had only 3 modest abilities towards her master. She could occasionally appear before him, ease his suffering, and painlessly end it if necessary. The interlocutor confidently emphasized that her task came down to 3 simple actions. She asked to remember this carefully and added a polite address with a little care. The slave girl felt a quiet joy. She realized that despite all the trials, they would always be together, and even in the most difficult moments of life, before death itself, she would be able to see her beloved and guide him with her last glance. Then she added sadly that even the real Nora didn't get such a privilege. She simply disappeared without a trace. At first, the guy was visibly nervous, feeling excitement and anxiety growing inside. But he soon gathered himself, took a deep breath, and firmly decided to calmly figure out what was happening, remaining calm and attentive. He realized that the inner gardens had been transformed into a real farm, where ideal conditions were created for growing plants and animals. Thanks to this, the inhabitants of the castle hardly had to go outside. They had everything they needed for life right at their fingertips. The soil there was surprisingly soft, as if specially prepared for young shoots. This showed that someone was very skillfully and carefully caring for the plants, creating the best conditions for their growth and development. Before coming here, Paracelsus worked in the fields with his father, helping to cultivate the land. After a day of hard work, his muscles would become so tired that even simple movements became difficult and painful. Remembering this, he wondered why muscles get tired and how to help the body recover faster. Paracelsus was very interested in the variety of creatures in the undead world. In addition to zombies, there were also skeletons and ghosts. Thinking about why only zombies appeared here, he decided that this was most likely a limitation of the skill that the master used. After all, zombies, even with rotting flesh, retain muscle and parts of their brain. Therefore, they are easier to control than skeletons, which require additional magic to move and interact with the world. The guy thought, if even one page of his recipe was difficult to follow, then keeping so many zombies under control was even more difficult. Perhaps there was a way to destroy their muscles without much effort. However, his ideas turned out to be useless and dangerous for living people. He looked down sharply, staring wearily at what had suddenly caught his attention. A handful of earth appeared in his palm, and Paracelsus simply beamed with happiness. He began to spin around briskly, enthusiastically examining and exploring everything around him. The young man looked closely at Goldie and curiously asked where in this building one could find the darkest and wettest place suitable for growing plants that required special conditions. The guy was sincerely happy when he found the perfect place that met all the necessary conditions and requirements. The girl looked at the young man in surprise and asked with interest what exactly brought him such great joy and delight. Paracelsus confidently stated that he had managed to find snail slime, and when Goldie asked in surprise if this substance could be used as acid against zombies, he explained that the idea was interesting, but the point was not the acid, but another useful application. He continued his story by noting that some species of slugs prefer to feed on sound energy, while others lead a quiet lifestyle, waiting for prey and not revealing themselves. In fact, the types of slugs depend on the characteristics of the place where they live, and sometimes differ greatly from each other. The girl anxiously asked if he was going to breed a special type of slug that could destroy all the zombies, and if that would be dangerous for them. The guy replied that slugs were usually not harmful at all and rarely posed a threat to humans, and he enthusiastically began to tell a story that dates back to the heyday of alchemy. Alchemists have always been attracted by the desire for knowledge and the thirst for experiments. They have repeatedly tried to unite man and animal, conducting daring experiments. This is how strange hybrids, bizarre creatures, and even terrifying monsters appeared. He continued the story, recalling how, during one of the experiments, ordinary slime turned into a black, sticky monster. It began to absorb everything organic around it, quickly growing to enormous sizes. And because of this, everyone panicked, fearing that the black threat would swallow the entire world. Then one of the founders of the elves appeared and taught everyone magic that could release fire. For them, this was the beginning of a whole magical era. Although the terrible monster was defeated, the losses among the people were simply enormous. Goldie was shocked to learn how dangerous slugs could be. The boy continued his story, explaining that the alchemists then realized that they needed to correct the mistakes of the past. They added an immutable feature to the snail's original genetic code that would remain with them forever, regardless of further changes in the species. This unique trait made snails friendly to humans. They became interested in humans and felt affection for them. It became part of their nature. Thanks to this, all species of snails that could threaten humans gradually became extinct on their own. Although Paracelsus is currently planning to create a rather weak type of slug, he hopes that thanks to his ability to mix ingredients, he will be able to achieve the desired result and neutralize all the zombies that threaten the safety of the group. Goldie impatiently interrupted the conversation, suggesting they get straight to the point, and asked directly what kind of slug the guy was going to create. The guy stood up and seriously added that before he started creating the slug, he had an important announcement to make. When he had previously received his unique ability, he had been in a hurry and had missed many moments because of this. He had not had time to understand all the details and subtleties, but all the skills related to magic worked simply. If you hold a magic item, you can use it. Although Paracelsus was not a great expert, he noticed that the Dark Knight's magic was very similar to the forbidden magic of death. The girl was confused because she didn't understand what this could all lead to. The guy immediately tried to calm her down, explaining that he didn't have any important books or notes with him in the dark of the night. The young man finally noticed that the woman always carried a book with her. She had never parted with it since the first moment they met. Unable to contain his curiosity, he asked permission to look into the mysterious manuscript. Paracelsus agreed to read the contents of the book, but warned he would do so only on the condition that the book was definitely not the incarnation of the Dark Knight, otherwise the consequences could be unpredictable and dangerous. The girl asked what the boy would do if it turned out that she was the Dark Knight. The boy honestly replied that he would not give away her secret or try to take her power, but would simply ask to free them from the trap and renounce evil. Such a sincere and noble answer truly shocked Goldie. She simply couldn't believe her ears. She trustingly handed the book to the young man, allowing him to examine it as much as he needed. Upon taking these notes, Paracelsus quickly realized that simply having them was not enough. There was no explanation of how exactly one could acquire someone else's skills. Therefore, he suggested that there were some other conditions that allowed one to master someone else's abilities. The boy realized that this was a real battle of skill in fire magic. By directing magic into the artifact and holding it in his hand, he no longer needed to concentrate or create spells. The time it took to cast spells became minimal. The power and accuracy only increased, and he could think about other things, occupying just one hand. Goldie accidentally came across this rare relic in a small magic shop, but if she wanted, she could easily get any similar artifact because she has influential patrons and unlimited access to resources. Paracelsus wondered why she didn't know about the ancient disaster with the slugs. After all, when you start studying alchemy, it's one of the key topics. Similarly, in magic, they always mention this event. The girl was sincerely glad that she was not faced with a simpleton, but with an attentive and intelligent interlocutor who knew how to ask deep and important questions. She added that she had no teachers, She had learned everything herself. Her family was poor, and she knew only one fireball and a few simple spells. It was embarrassing to admit, but she didn't even want to be a real student. If it weren't for the Thunder Vor, even a regular fireball would take a long time to prepare. At such a short distance, Goldie couldn't protect herself at all. She also said that he could check to see if she had hidden a book of death magic somewhere nearby. Paracelsus, blushing with shame, sincerely apologized for his mistake and, overcome with guilt, knelt before the woman, showing his respect and remorse. He thought he had been too rude and tactless. The girl, on the contrary, was pleasantly surprised by his attentiveness and observation. She said that she appreciated his wit and asked him to feel free to share his thoughts if there was a reason to talk. She liked that the guy even checked her identity so carefully. But what struck her most was his subsequent reaction. Did he really think that the villain would stop his crimes after one polite request to come to his senses? Goldie concluded her point by explaining that if she were a real enemy, he would definitely get a good deal for asking such blunt questions. Mistrust is sometimes useful, but acting alone and ignoring the help of allies is dooming yourself to defeat. Paracelsus enthusiastically said that his greatest dream was to resolve the conflict peacefully, without bloodshed and suffering, in order to save the precious lives of friends and loved ones. The woman seriously addressed the guy, persistently asking him to listen. They were here and knowingly risking their lives for a common goal. Therefore, if he wants to get out of this horror and stay alive, he needs to get rid of his naivety as soon as possible and accept the cruel truth, rejecting his childhood dreams. Meanwhile, the Dark Knight stood nearby, surrounded by a vast army of the undead. He grimly awaited the appearance of the enemy, preparing to repel the attack and gain the upper hand in the coming battle. Suddenly, an excited girl appeared and shouted in a trembling voice that their main enemy was already here. He was standing right in front of the main gate of the fortress and preparing for battle. Goldie confidently said that she was going to meet the threat and instructed Dahlia to tell the young man about everything that was happening now, about the latest events and the team's plans. The boy timidly asked what he should do in such a situation. The girl delicately invited him to come closer. Dahlia explained that with this movement she was directing the accumulated magical energy into her palms, and this was how the spell was activated. Watching all this, Paracelsus was surprised to notice how the symbolic drawing began to glow, showing the power of this energy. Looking into the mirror, which sparkled with a magical light, the young man suddenly saw in it the distorted face of the Dark Knight, which was watching their company's every move. What he saw in the mirror so impressed him that he couldn't help but ask with admiration how this mechanism worked. The girl explained that with special hand movements, she triggers an automatic connection to the corresponding magic circle. The connection is made by the position of the fingers. The index finger is the main entrance, the ring finger is the back entrance, and the middle finger is responsible for the magic circle in the tower. The correct combination determines which magic circle is used to transmit the image. Because of this, it is impossible to transmit anything other than sound and light. You cannot shoot through it. The boy thought that nothing would be visible from the top of the tower. Dahlia explained that if you press your little finger, the flow of light and sound increases, and demonstrated this in practice. The Dark Knight was indignant because everyone started talking loudly. The Dark Knight realized that he was standing in front of the same boy, and suggested that he go down. The boy replied that he wanted to live. Then the enemy suggested that the boy probably didn't care if these girls died. Paracelsus assured the girls that nothing was in danger, because he had a reliable way to destroy the zombie army. Besides, if the Dark Knight decided to attack, it could cost him his life. That is why Paracelsus advised them to retreat and stay away from the fortress. He added that he did not intend to harm the enemy. He only asked to return him and the others home, and promised not to do anything bad. The Dark Knight replied that he was asking too much, and called him a weakling. The young man insisted that force was not needed for negotiations, but in response he heard that it was necessary. The Dark Knight scornfully declared that the weak only die helplessly, and ordered the young man to be silent. Then he offered, if the girls would give him the boy, he would return them to the real world. The monster gave the girls 1 hour to think about it, warning them that he had been too lenient with them so far. Now, if they wanted to resist his will, there would be no more value. There would be no place for them in his collection, and he would send them to their deaths at the hands of zombies without hesitation. Goldie turned to Sylvia and asked if she had heard the enemy's threats. Then she asked her to pass this on to everyone so that they could discuss further actions together. Goldie herself decided to follow the Dark Knight and buy time for the team. The girl understood the request and ordered everyone to gather. Paracelsus realized that the situation had become very dangerous and immediately asked Dahlia to stop the magic. The girl agreed without hesitation, because she saw how serious everything was and knew that she had to act immediately. He was very excited about the idea of creating a special cartridge that could effectively destroy entire crowds of zombies. After discussing this idea with his assistant, he asked her to prepare the necessary materials and help implement his plan. To prepare this unusual mixture, you will need the following ingredients: a large wooden barrel, a fresh, immature snail, regular pebbles, dry fallen leaves, leftover edible vegetables, and fertile humus. Next, you need to make a hole in the bottom of the barrel and fill it with layers of gravel, humus, leaves, and vegetable waste. It is important to monitor how much live food you consume to prevent the slugs from turning into something undesirable. Too many insects can ruin everything. He then clearly explained that the next step would be to release the young slug into a specially prepared container. In addition, Paracelsus took into account that snails cannot tolerate high temperatures and dryness, so he made sure to add clean, cool water to the container. Once all the ingredients are laid out, you need to close the lid tightly, but from time to time ventilate the barrel and mix the contents thoroughly. This is important because during fermentation the temperature rises, which can deteriorate the quality of the future product. The slug has a unique ability to adapt to external conditions, gradually eating all available substances. Over time, it develops, acquiring new properties and features, turning into a microbial slug. Dahlia was truly amazed at how quickly the snail could process all the components. Paracelsus explained that this was thanks to his recipe. Once the main stages were done, the entire system would rebuild itself and speed up the processes, bringing them to perfection. He added that such a projectile decomposes slowly, but thanks to the recipe, this problem disappears. Then the guy was going to use this as his advantage in the negotiations, once again asking to let them go from this world. The girl liked this idea. He also realized that the attack could come from any direction, so he decided to make 3 more shells to better defend himself. The assistant immediately agreed with this idea and promised to help the teacher. Dahlia was sincerely happy about her success, glowing with happiness, because together they managed to create 3 more slimes and achieve their goal. The young man suggested placing slugs in areas where zombie attacks were expected. He explained that even if his abilities were not enough to completely stop the danger, the slugs could significantly slow down the enemy's advance. The curious girl asked what was going on in the other barrel. The guy explained with a smile that he was preparing a small side project there, which he was doing in his free time between his main work. He added that this was exactly what he wanted to ask. Doll was truly amazed by the possibilities of alchemy, and she repeatedly repeated with enthusiasm how amazing and magical the descriptions of this process seemed. With a careful hint of personal interest, she shyly wondered if it was possible for her to become a master of this fascinating craft herself. Paracelsus asked if she had invented the spell herself. The girl confirmed it and added that she had learned everything on her own, and if she had more free time, she could have mastered healing magic as well. The young man thought for a moment and noticed that in this case, studying alchemy could be difficult. After all, unlike wizards who use magic, alchemists work with elements, that is, with primary matter. There are clear boundaries between these areas. The guy further explained that for alchemists, primary matter is like raw material from which various things and substances can be created. And for magicians, it is something like a force or energy that triggers all sorts of phenomena and processes. If you try to do alchemy and use magic to isolate the so-called primary matter and turn it into fire with a spell, you will feel that the process itself is resistive and does not come easily. Or for example, imagine trying to use alchemy as magic, collecting some power in a flask, trying to separate it or mix it with something else to create something completely new. But no matter how hard you try, in the end nothing good comes of it. Such seemingly impossible and contradictory actions force people to subconsciously use the magic of persuasion, which says that what they are planning is unrealistic. This phenomenon is often called subconscious pressure. Paracelsus continued to explain. In areas of high pressure, even with maximum confidence, it is impossible to achieve the desired result. That is why buildings associated with magical practices are not erected near famous alchemical laboratories, and vice versa, of course. Some rare people who are equally good at alchemy and magic have been able to overcome this obstacle, so they must have special abilities, either incredible work capacity or true natural talent. This information interested Dolly. The young man smiled encouragingly, emphasizing that the desire to develop is always useful, and promised to share his knowledge as soon as the opportunity arises. The joyful girls sincerely thanked their mentor for such a generous offer. The boy asked the snail to behave well, but suddenly he heard footsteps behind him. It was Goldie, who was addressing him. She said that they had finished their conversation, and now Dahlia and Paracelsus could go upstairs. The young man immediately understood what this meant. He was now officially allowed to go up to the second floor of the old building. They went up to the second floor and entered the large hall. The boy immediately felt the tension in the air. Noticing that there were about 20 people here, he looked around carefully. Goldie explained that a few people were standing guard outside, but the main part had gathered here. Paracelsus, breathing heavily and sweating with nerves, noticed that some of the people present looked very ill. He quickly realized that these unfortunates had probably recently fallen victim to a zombie attack and were now barely able to stand on their feet from weakness. The girl noticed that the guy was looking at her and asked him not to look so closely. The guy was embarrassed, immediately looked away and quickly apologized, feeling ashamed. Inside, he was very worried about his rudeness, realizing that he had behaved badly. Goldie introduced everyone to him and thought everyone had heard of him, but she explained that he had special powers that would help him fight the darkness. Thanks to him, she had a chance to survive, and she wasn't going to give him up. Then Goldie asked if anyone had any objections. If so, they should raise their hands. Lily sharply asked the boy how he assessed their chances of defeating the Dark Knight. Rose supported her friend and added that they had already heard about the first ability of the newcomer and now wanted to learn about the second. Paracelsus replied that the Dark Knight had 2 powers. He could control the dead, and he could pass into the world of mirrors. Knowing this gave them an important advantage, so he believed they had a good chance of winning. He also emphasized that this is why he never reveals his second ability. Perhaps the enemy is eavesdropping on their conversations with the help of magic that allows them to see and hear everything that is happening through the eyes and ears of zombies, flies, or mice. The guy also shared that he had a clear plan on how to defeat the enemy. Violet was interested and persistently asked him to tell the group all his ideas in more detail, hoping to hear something truly effective and useful. The young man proposed a bold plan. First, give it away in the Dark Knight. Hearing this, Dahlia jumped up with excitement and anxiety in her eyes. Goldie, Sylvia, Violet, Lily, and Rose, upon hearing the unexpected statement, turned their heads sharply toward the speaker and stared at him intently. Everyone was confused, trying to understand what risk their new ally had actually taken. Paracelsus explained that judging by the enemy's actions, the Dark Knight would definitely come closer, and then it would be possible to deliver a decisive blow. After his words, everyone asked in surprise if he was going to act alone. The young man explained that if they all went at it together, the enemy might retreat quickly and drag out the battle for a long time, taking away their chance of a quick victory. But if they could catch him in a mistake, they could win quickly and effectively. Paracelsus offered to fight alone, but if he gained the upper hand, he would ask everyone to support him with all their might. If he began to lose, then the rest should simply watch and not annoy the enemy, while Paracelsus himself would try to escape as soon as he could. The boy's idea seemed very interesting and unusual to Sylvia. Her eyes lit up with curiosity, and a mysterious smile appeared on her lips. The girl perked up, feeling excitement and a foreboding of an exciting struggle, full of intrigue and risk. Sylvia suggested testing the boy's abilities and telling him to give it his all. The young warrior agreed to her proposal. The door flew open, and Dahlia rushed out into the hallway. She called Paracelsus. The little girl timidly said that he had decided to try to negotiate with the enemy to free the prisoners. But there was doubt and fear in her quiet voice. She thought it was too dangerous and risky to go there alone. The teacher leaned over to the student and quietly said that, given the number of people who could be affected, he had to change his original decision. At the same time, he explained that his previous words also remain valid. He has a special trump card and a chance to win this fight. It is simply important to act decisively, gather strength and deliver a powerful blow in order to quickly complete the matter, without dragging out the fight and without exposing himself to unnecessary risk. He looked warmly at Dahlia and admitted that he could only completely rely on her. He quietly asked the girl to carefully preserve the important thing he had given her in advance. Dahlia was very moved by the mentor's words, and she agreed. Goldie cautiously asked Paracelsus if he wanted to drag her into a fight. He reassured her that he had no plans to involve the girl in the battle. The master announced that he wanted to make as many slugs as possible. They would be great help in the fight against zombies. To do this, he promised to make a detailed list of all the necessary ingredients. But he warned that it would be a lot of work, and he would need the help of 3 more people. For him, the most important thing was to participate in at least one stage of preparation to combat the threat. He persistently convinced his assistants to work on creating useful slugs until the very end, even if something happened to him and he died. Goldie suddenly noticed that the flame had become weaker and asked if this was the work of Paracelsus. The alchemist raised his eyebrows in surprise, pleasantly surprised that the young sorceress was able to notice such a slight change in magic. He explained that slugs are afraid of fire, so he reduced the amount of fire energy around them to make them harder to burn with magic. But he didn't think it would have that much of an effect on the girl and her fireball. She replied that if he managed to weaken her even more, she would be even angrier. Goldie asked if Paracelsus really didn't want them to join him if something happened, because she was ready to support her ally. He replied that he could handle any situation on his own. The girl noticed that he spoke very confidently, and said that she had a request for him. She asked that if during their escape it suddenly turned out that the Dark Knight decided to destroy this place along with them, that he at least take Dahlia with him. After all, she was still a child, it was too early for her to die. Paracelsus drank the elixir, hoping it would give him strength, and then named the snail Shogot, and asked if it liked the name. After the snail received the name, its mental abilities noticeably increased. Why this happened is unknown. The guy asked his partner to carefully monitor his actions and follow all his instructions, after which he carefully began to descend down the rope ladder, trying to keep his balance and be confident in every movement. A huge number of zombies gathered in front of the building. They filled the entire square, creating a creepy scene and causing a sense of danger in anyone who dared to approach. The warrior looked at what was happening before him, and gradually doubt appeared on his face, as if a struggle was raging inside him between determination and uncertainty. And the main enemy, the Dark Knight, stood right at the epicenter of this chaos, confidently leading his huge army and seeming to embody absolute power and control over everything that was happening. Paracelsus understood very well how serious everything was. His enemies kept their distance from him because they knew about his power. Meanwhile, the Dark Knight could only wonder. He thought that the girls would keep the secret and not betray the boy, but everything turned out differently. The enemy did not want to waste time. He first intended to deprive the boy of the ability to move by cutting off his legs, but he added that he was ready to listen to any pleas for mercy, but only when the boy was powerless and immobile. Paracelsus quickly grabbed the slug Shoggoth and threw it towards the advancing zombie army, hoping to distract the enemy and buy himself some time. The Dark Knight loudly ordered his warriors to immediately defend him from the slug, which was rapidly moving straight towards them. The little friends managed to hit one of the zombies, after which the clever warrior immediately ordered all the infected creatures to be turned into fertilizer to avoid further spreading of the danger. The Dark Knight watched in amazement as his zombies simply dissolved into thin air in an instant, leaving him at a loss. What to do next? Then the knight turned its attention to an even stranger and scarier sight. The slug that had been thrown earlier began to grow rapidly before our eyes, and it was truly astonishing. Paracelsus considered this a wonderful solution to the problem, and immediately loudly ordered the method of turning zombies into compost to be used again, adding the phrase to the recipe, add and add again. The Dark Knight was well aware that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. The slug continued to grow and consume the remains of dead bodies, becoming larger and stronger, threatening to destroy both the army and its master. Suddenly, the slugs rushed forward and instantly grabbed the nearest zombie. This left the army leader frozen in place in horror. The slug slowly swallowed its victim whole, secreting sticky mucus, and continued to grow uncontrollably in size. Paracelsus was both happy and scared as he watched his little helper grow rapidly and turn into a huge snail. The Dark Knight shouted commands in desperation, ordering the zombies not to panic, to gather together, and to immediately attack the young hero to finish him off once and for all. The army of the dead rushed at the young man, groaning eerily and pushing in a chaotic mass. True horror gripped the young fighter's heart. The Dark Knight quickly retreated, saving itself, and Paracelsus, determined not to let the enemy escape, shouted angrily that he would never allow this, and boldly rushed straight through the crowd of the living dead into the very danger. He quickly dove into the middle of the giant slug, and immediately found himself inside its thick and pulsating mass. The assistant created an air chamber in his body so that his master could breathe freely. The young man searched himself feverishly, desperately searching for the hidden thing. Finally, finding a small bag, he calmed down. Probably everything inside was dry and unharmed. Paracelsus asked his eccentric companion to throw him high into the air. The Goth obediently complied, pushing the alchemist away as if to show the world his strength. Once high in the sky, the boy felt a strong fear of heights, but was able to gather himself and calm down, focusing on the main thing, finding the enemy. As soon as the enemy appeared in sight, he carefully threw the treasured bag in his direction. The young hero felt disappointed and irritated when he realized that he had missed his target. Meanwhile, Dahlia, who remained in the castle, had already foreseen a possible failure and calculated the distance in advance. in order to ensure her comrades and correct their mistake if necessary. And then she shouted loudly that the main thing was to get ahead of him and rushed south. The girl used magic, activating a spell to fly in the wind, after which the wind abruptly changed direction, and the bag instantly changed its trajectory, flying rapidly straight to the desired target. Suddenly, the bag fell right in front of the Dark Knight. Paracelsus was glad that the magic circle remained inside and thanked his assistant for a good job, then plunged back into Shoggoth. Since Dahlia wasn't sure if the bag would reach its target, she decided to set it on fire with a fire spell. This gave the bag an extra boost, and Dahlia could better track its movement. The Dark Knight stood confused and stared at the strange object before him, but suddenly the bag flashed with a bright light and exploded violently, showering him with hot debris. Seeing the aftermath of the explosion, Paracelsus exclaimed in joy, satisfied that the plan had worked perfectly. Violet exclaimed happily, happy that the enemy army had taken a heavy hit from the fire. Rose immediately rejoiced with her, and both friends were amazed at the power of the explosion they had created. Paracelsus was truly surprised. He felt intense heat, even though he was quite far from the site of the explosion. The Dark Knight appeared and declared that no living person could survive such a close explosion. The warrior noticed the enemy alive, and that's when the explosion occurred. The boy was confused because he couldn't understand what had happened, and thought it was because of that fireball. Boldy shouted for everyone to pay attention and prepare for battle, because something huge was approaching from the west. Rose was horrified by what she saw. A monster appeared before the two archers, huge and hideous. It caused them wild fear, and the girl's heart beat even faster. Violet immediately realized it was a dragon, and panicked, shouted to her friend that they needed to run away immediately before the monster attacked. But suddenly the monster opened its mouth and released a powerful stream of liquid that flooded everything in front of it. Paracelsus was surprised to see how the Dark Knights were able to create zombies even from giant creatures, and immediately ordered Shoggoth to move faster towards the cathedral. But suddenly he noticed something suspicious behind him. Zombies, blinded by their thirst for murder, still climb onto the surface of the slug, even though they know that its caustic liquid will inevitably corrode their skin. The guy tried his best to stay calm, mentally adding new details to the recipe, but suddenly he felt that someone completely unpredictable and very dangerous was rapidly approaching them. The Dark Knight instantly appeared from the shadows, abruptly grabbed the boy by the collar, and was determined to put an end to his experiments once and for all. He threw the warrior straight into the crowd of zombies, and confident of victory, began to quickly remove his camouflage mask, revealing his true face. Finally, he threw the mask contemptuously far back, leaving his body floating in the thick mass of slime. The mask, flying some distance, fell directly on the head of one of his zombies, who now looked like a funny cartoon character. While Paracelsus was coming to his senses after the sudden attack, he was unexpectedly grabbed by the same zombie, who had another mask on his head. So the unfortunate man now had two heads grimacing in different directions. The Dark Knight laughed ominously and triumphantly declared that the forces of darkness had won and achieved complete victory. The Dark Knight seemed to smile and threaten, saying that before the snail could reach him, it would surely break the young hero's skull. Having become the winner, the boy realized that he was not an ordinary person, and he did not have any special abilities. The enemy ordered someone to check if the warrior's recipe had really appeared, and the boy guessed that the man was not addressing him. The Dark Knight persistently asked the invisible assistant not to interfere, explaining that this was just their personal quarrel. Paracelsus guessed that among the girls there were those who had abilities, and they were now in danger. The young man insistently ordered Shoggoth to immediately run to the cathedral and protect Dahlia at all costs, because he himself already felt that he could no longer continue the fight. At this time, the Dark Knight imperiously forced him to be silent and to watch only him, because he already felt that victory was close. Suddenly, Sylvia appeared, clutching a shining sword tightly in her hands, and immediately rushed at the enemy, swinging her weapon skillfully and accurately. The enemy was barely able to stand, breathing heavily and pressing his hand to his chest, from which blood flowed profusely. These were the traces of a precise blow from the brave girl. Paracelsus asked the girl what she was doing here. She replied that he seemed interesting to her, so she decided to follow him, because she could die anywhere anyway. The young man exclaimed excitedly that the most important thing was happening in the cathedral right now. Everyone there was in mortal danger, so we had to run there immediately as quickly as possible. Sylvia said he was completely out of his mind. It was easier for him to risk his life to save others than to worry about his own safety. Paracelsus asked Sylvia to leave quickly, but the girl objected, saying that she was already going to leave herself, so it was better for him to let her go. The young man replied that he could not do so because he was using a disguise spell that only worked when he was near him. He asked Nora to help him. Nora asked him not to go to the cathedral because he was already so injured that if she didn't ease the pain, he wouldn't even be able to move. She asked them to leave these people and try to save at least the boy so that he would survive. The young man asked Sylvia which of the girls knew how to write spells, and was told that only Goldie and Dahlia could do it. He also asked if anyone else was listening to their conversation. Nitch waited for an answer, but if anyone was listening, it would most likely be Goldie. She was the only one who could do such a thing. Paracelsus suggested that the Dark Knight was played by one of two girls, either Goldie or Dahlia, given the circumstances and available facts. He decided that the Dark Knight could create a mirror world and possess necromancy. Perhaps if he could take away someone else's abilities, he would have more. But at first the boy thought to focus on these two abilities. She is afraid to attack openly, so she is just as cowardly as he is. She needs to come up with a cunning plan, wait for the right moment and quietly take away his strength, remaining completely safe. Sylvia realized that her enemies were trying to exploit her trust to get closer to her. Then she asked what the boy would do if his suspicions came true. Paracelsus confidently declared that if necessary, he would enter the battle, defeat the enemy, and force everyone to return to the real world. If he failed to win, he would transfer his special abilities to Dahlia before he died. Sylvia objected that Dahlia could very well be an enemy. The young man added that if she had the strength, they would hunt her down too, and she might actually kill him. But that didn't mean she was everyone's enemy. If she were an ordinary person, she could run anywhere, just to stay alive. He wanted to do something useful, and if he abandoned the child in trouble, he would never forgive himself. The tension made his head spin. Paracelsus entrusted his friend with the recipe for Dahlia. Sylvia interrupted him angrily, insisting that he keep quiet and let her pass it on to the girl herself, because they would still have a chance to prove their victory. The Dark Knight cut one of his zombies in half with a powerful blow, and discovered a hidden black magic sword inside, which glowed ominously. Immediately after that, the Dark Knight rushed forward, brandishing his weapon. Sylvia instantly reacted to the danger. She drew her sharp sword to repel the enemy's deadly blow and protect her friend. The girl quickly responded and delivered a powerful blow. At that moment, Paracelsus staggered, lost his balance, and soon fainted, falling to the ground. The Dark Knight laughed mockingly and admitted that he loved fighting, especially when there was a risk of death. It added to the thrill. Sylvia agreed that it brought them both closer, as she also enjoyed dangerous battles. Paracelsus believed that an ordinary city girl was incredibly strong. She said that there was very little left, and if he could go alone, then let him go ahead. The young man agreed. The young man stood up and hurried to join the others. Meanwhile, in the cathedral, the dragon kept trying to get to the girls, trying to eat them. But suddenly a fireball attacked him. Goldie asked worriedly if her friends were okay. Violet persistently persuaded her friend to run away from here immediately because the dragon was still exhaling poisonous smoke and was already preparing to deliver another dangerous blow. Suddenly, Goth appeared and struck unexpectedly, striking not only the dragon, but also causing incredible surprise and admiration in Goldie, who did not expect to see such a strong defender just when he was needed most. The snail greedily latched its teeth into the dragon's scaly body, trying to swallow the huge creature whole. But the dragon was not so defenseless. Sensing danger, it powerfully launched its poisonous spiracle directly into the attacker's body. Paracelsus, seeing what was happening, realized that such a blow could melt even a Shoggoth. This meant that he had a truly deadly weapon in front of him, a poison that could destroy any monster, regardless of its strength or size. He understood how serious everything was. After all, the snail had no immunity to this deadly poison, so accepting such a gift from the dragon would turn into a real disaster. The young boy had not expected to encounter such an unpleasant enemy of his faithful snail friend, and now he stood in the middle of the battlefield, confused, trying to understand how serious this danger was. The alchemist immediately realized that the first blow had indeed been successful. He immediately ordered his subordinate to collect the remains of the giant's body, which were still alive in its last moments, and to strike the next blow in order to finally deprive the enemy of strength and end the battle with victory. The Shoggoth silently accepted the master's order, gathered the remnants of its strength, and rushed forward. But soon the slug stopped in front of the dragon, froze, estimating the distance, and then suddenly rushed to the attack. They delivered a powerful blow with their hands precisely at the weak spot. The slime didn't stop, striking again and again, putting all its strength into each one. The giant's body trembled from the powerful attacks, flesh tearing, bones breaking, and the poisonous force burning him from the inside. Seeing that the attack had succeeded, Paracelsus shouted with inspiration to Shogot, ordering him to strike the enemy with all his might. Meanwhile, Goldie suddenly appeared next to the boy and began to observe the situation. The young man excitedly turned to the girl and asked how he could get inside the building to try to save people. Time was running out, and a decision had to be made immediately. Goldie informed the boy that the first ladder was broken, but she would quickly install a spare structure elsewhere to provide a safe path inside. The boy asked the girl to hurry, because the situation was critical and every second of delay could cost someone's life. Paracelsus believed that the dragon was indeed extremely strong. No matter how much the slime attacked, it seemed to be able to do almost no harm. Although it forced the dragon to defend itself, suddenly the slime lifted its master even higher. The Shoggoth decisively detached a part of itself and lifted its creator up, carefully carrying him away from danger. Thanks to this, the alchemist managed to avoid harm. The slug itself focused on protecting its master, while at the same time attacking the dragon without stopping. The young man froze in surprise, barely understanding what had just happened. His faithful friend had given a part of himself to save his comrade. This skill both fascinated and frightened him, filling the boy's heart with gratitude and anxiety for his friend's future. Paracelsus sighed heavily as he looked at the body of his fallen friend. He was overcome with deep sadness at the loss of his comrade. But then Goldie called out to him, bringing him back to reality, and urged him to gather to ensure the safety of those still remaining in the team. In a tense voice, she asked the boy to quickly take Dahlia and leave the dilapidated building, warning that it was about to collapse due to the damage. The young man asked worriedly what would happen to her alone, whether she would be able to escape, or whether she also needed help. Goldie confidently replied that she would stay here until the end, because many of the wounded and the person on the stretcher needed help. She took on the responsibility of protecting everyone who could no longer get up and escape on their own. Paracelsus immediately understood what was happening. Goldie had managed to warn him that Dahlia had already learned of the escape route and was waiting in the north wing of the library. That was where the boy had to quickly go to make the escape plan work. The guy understood perfectly well. The enemy was attacking with one goal: to drive him into a dead end, deprive him of the opportunity to maneuver, and make him easy prey. Only understanding the enemy's plans could help him avoid fatal consequences and get out of the trap to have a chance at salvation. He knew that the attack might stop as soon as he left. If the enemy was among them, it made him even more convinced that he had to escape as quickly as possible. But why Goudie would let him escape with Dahlia? If she also had superpowers, he could not understand. The guy thought that first he would be allowed to get close to the girl, and then they would be used as hostages, or Dahlia was acting in concert with Goldie. Or maybe Goldie simply didn't want the girl to get hurt and was willing to do anything for her safety. But in any case, separating the two possessors of the abilities is very beneficial for him. After all, this way you can find out exactly which one of them is the enemy and finally solve this problem. And if you can't determine the culprit, he decided to transfer his abilities to Dahlia and help her escape. Paracelsus also realized that his enemies had had many opportunities to get rid of him earlier, but for some reason they hadn't. He didn't know if they needed some special recipe of his or something else, but they were definitely counting on some important ability he possessed. Dahlia, catching her teacher's gaze, heard her mentor calmly say that she had accidentally overheard their entire conversation and now had to leave immediately. The girl, lowering her eyes, hesitantly admitted that she was not yet ready to leave her hiding place. The boy asked the girl what she was holding in her hands. She replied that it was a spell book, and added that there were probably many more of the same books here. The young man, confused, admitted that he understood absolutely nothing of what was written in the book. He asked if she herself directed the magic directly into the book, and that was how the special spell was created. Dahlia explained that one must write by passing magical power through the text, otherwise it will be ordinary letters. An example of such a book is Goldie's grimoire. Paracelsus found this interesting and realized that if the girl wrote as explained in the book, it would be a spell. The girl added that, in addition to transmitting magical power, it is also necessary to reflect the letters in mirror form. All these letters are like mirror images, and the correct order is very important. Otherwise the spell simply won't work, or the effect will be the opposite. The young man realized that in the mirror world everything works exactly like that. Suddenly the alchemist had a strange epiphany and understood what to do. He resolutely called the girl closer and said that it was time to run away. Paracelsus suddenly realized that Goldie did indeed possess magical abilities, and her words about the terrible war in this world suggested that the book was probably originally created in a mirror reality. He wondered why she had lied, since she could have simply said that she had found him before she arrived here. He thought that she had lied unexpectedly, because she had not expected such a question and had answered automatically, and he had not noticed it at the time. Dea had said that there was a hidden passage in this tunnel, and had shown him where it was. Finally, the boy realized that Goldie had lied for a reason. She had done it specifically to push him to befriend the little student. Paracelsus had no choice but to follow the enemy's plan. With slightly pursed lips, he turned to Dahlia and suggested that she go first, promising to give a signal when it was necessary to change course. The boy decided to take matters into his own hands, feeling responsible for his partner's safety. Together, they ventured further into the dark corridors of the dungeon, relying on their intuition and hoping for success. Meanwhile, in the dilapidated building, Goldie calmly addressed the huge dragon. She confidently stated that the two travelers had already left the fortress, using one of the secret exits. She raised her hand and cast a spell to return the body, which had already outlived its time, to oblivion. Then the girl emotionally complained that enduring this unbearable stench was a real ordeal, and working with dragons was simply impossible. Besides, in Goldie's opinion, the huge creatures and those that existed outside the capsules were too arbitrary. So she decided to limit herself to zombies. The Dark Knight admitted his guilt. He had gotten too carried away. The girl added that if he disobeyed the order again, he would not survive. Goldie worriedly asked if the man was sure that all the slimes were really destroyed. After all, if even one remained, it could cause trouble. The Dark Knight tried to calm her down, saying that he had personally done everything possible to remove any threat, and now there was no need to worry. He insisted that when the time came to take Paracelsus, she should entrust this important task to him. He explained that the boy was unexpectedly strong for his age, which greatly complicated the events of that night. Chief Goldie calmly agreed to entrust this to the executor. The Dark Knight smiled and couldn't wait to meet this warrior again. Nora and Koko, leaving Paracelsus's cozy house, set out to look for him in the dense forest. Soon they came to a small pond that looked completely ordinary and safe. Nora concluded that this area was indeed similar to the one the dogman had described. The atmosphere around the pond seemed to be permeated with the presence of the spirits of the dead, but the reason for this feeling lay not in the pond itself, but somewhere within it. After analyzing the situation, the girl realized that the smooth water surface was a kind of portal. Probably, it was through the reflection that the transition between dimensions took place, connecting the real world with parallel spaces. Nora noticed that before meeting her, this man had behaved too frivolously and carelessly. Analyzing his behavior, she thought that it was quite possible that someone had noticed him long before they met. Perhaps some powerful rival had been watching him for a long time. Thanks to the actions of the Norn group, the dog was able to hide the traces of the souls leading from this pond. But it is likely that whoever controls these souls noticed the tracking and decided to accelerate their plans for the owner. Burke asked Nora if she was still at that pond. The feathered friend said that he had caught several mice and asked if she wanted to taste such a delicacy. The girl, drooling with delight, instantly agreed to try the dish she had been waiting for so long. Quickly lighting a small fire, they began to cook. The pleasant smell of roasting meat quickly spread around. Burke explained in detail that these rodents are called herb mice because they feed only on specific plants. That's why when they're cooked over a fire, the scent of the aromatic herbs permeates the meat, giving the dish a special flavor and pleasant aroma. The bird, with a satisfied look, said that it was used to eating its prey alive and fresh, for this was the best way to satisfy its hunger. Nora, who was sitting nearby, inhaled the aroma of the fried meat loudly, and noted that the dish smelled very tasty and appetizing. Björk strictly limits her meat consumption, and the heroine wondered if these rules apply to her situation. Her feathered friend confirmed. Yes, the hostess adheres to the principles of healthy eating, but sometimes she can make exceptions, showing flexibility and understanding. He added that if the meat was right in front of her, the owner looked very sad. Therefore, the bird ate the meat only when the owner was not looking. One can only imagine how difficult it must be to be the pet of such a strange person. Burke said the landlady was strange, but that didn't put him off. After all, she was one of the few in this country willing to cooperate with the beastmen. Now she genuinely cared about everyone, both the weak and the exploited. Burke admitted that it was really hard. But he still believed that in such a world there must be someone who would fight, who would cry for those who were suffering and dying, even if he himself did not understand why he had to do so, and he thought that this bird was somehow strange. The bird asked if he would eat this ball of wool, to which he heard the answer that he would not. The interlocutor added that Norn asked to convey, Paracelsus will return in about 3 days, so there is no need to worry now. She will definitely come tomorrow. We'll tell everything in detail, and for now the girl can rest peacefully tonight. Paracelsus slowly poured warm water into an old wooden bathtub. The water hissed pleasantly, making melodious sounds that mixed with the smell of herbal infusions. When the bathtub was filled to the desired level, the young man carefully took a coin marked 60 degrees from his pocket. Slowly dipping the coin into the warm water, he added that bathing in such a bath helps to quickly restore strength and relieve fatigue. Medicinal herbs, specially selected for healing, create a wonderful combination of aromas and beneficial properties that accelerate the renewal of cells and tissues. Then the mentor entered the room and told the student that the healing water was already waiting for her, suggesting that she take a bath first. The child gasped in surprise, not expecting that the bath was already ready, and thought that the young man's recipe was truly incredible. The girl became interested in him and, having gathered courage, excitedly asked how he had damaged his eye in the fight with the Dark Knight. Paracelsus sincerely thanked the girl, adding that thanks to her skills, her condition had improved significantly. Hearing such praise, Dahlia was delighted with the achieved result. She strongly advised him to tell her immediately if the pain in his eye worsened, or if any unpleasant symptoms appeared. The girl sincerely wanted to help her mentor and take care of his health. The young man agreed to this request and promised to listen to the student's advice. After he had managed to escape from the cathedral, he had pondered for a long time where to go next. Recalling the details of their journey, he imagined how they had hurried away from danger at night, walking through the darkness until dawn. Finally, choosing the first house they came across, they stopped there. And when he realized how great the power of the art of healing was, Paracelsus realized that it was thanks to the healing skills of his friend that he managed to stop the bleeding. However, it seemed almost impossible to regain my sight, as a veil constantly hung before my eyes, blurring the contours of objects and making it difficult to navigate in space. Suddenly, the young man anxiously began to rummage feverishly through his old leather briefcase, going through everything inside. Carefully taking the bag out of his bag, he began to untie the knots, holding his breath and trying to be as careful as possible. Carefully shaking out the contents of the bag, the boy saw a small, barely alive Shoggoth on the floor. Seeing this, Paracelsus firmly decided to do everything possible to save the baby, to care for and treat him so that he could recover. He suggested making a special compost in which the snail could recover. This is what prompted him to come up with an interesting idea. Even if he succeeded, Goldie would still be left with fireballs and a poisonous dragon. He suggested that perhaps it would be better to turn the slime into some other kind of slime. There have been cases where adult slimes have changed their type, but this has been very rare. However, the guy had heard of such experiments and believed that his recipe would help achieve the desired result. Of course, at first he thought of choosing one of the basic elements that could be useful in battle, but each of them had its own weaknesses. And the alchemist wanted to create something special. Paracelsus also mentioned that slime is often bred to be able to absorb various materials. So he proposed creating a slime that feeds on substances that are harmful to the enemy. For example, a slime that can eat clothes. He began to think about the options: air, stone, sound, light, heat, magical energy. The last option seemed like a good one, but it would all depend on whether his friend could withstand the poison while he absorbed the energy. It seemed quite risky. The young man heard that some travelers live in symbiosis with a slug. They get energy from any organic matter and can stay in dungeons for several days. But this is quite dangerous, although sometimes it gives superhuman abilities. After thinking about it, he realized that the risks for him were minimal, and the likelihood of trouble was very small. All he had to do was carefully integrate the human body and the unusual creature so that they would harmoniously merge. Concerned, the boy leaned toward his little friend and cautiously asked if he could hear his voice. Then he said that if this slime could hear him and move, then let it eat his right eye, remember his body, and ask to live in it to work for him. The creator of the Shoggoth looked at his suffering friend with a pain in his heart. His eyes were red with tears. On his cheek, which was almost touched by the slime, there were wet traces of emotional tears. He spoke words of support quietly and sincerely, begging the creature not to give up and to hold on. The little snail slowly crawled over the skin, gradually approaching Paracelsus's eye. The touch caused a strong, throbbing pain throughout his body. The mucus slowed the penetration into the eye socket. It felt as if a sharp knife was cutting inside. He trembled violently, realizing that although he had seen everything, the pain was so intense that tears flowed from his eyes. Every second that the mucus remained in his eye was accompanied by unbearable spasms throughout his body. Lying relaxed in the hot water, Dahlia felt for the first time the fatigue of the last few days disappear. The bath, filled with aromatic oils and herbs, brought her long-awaited relief. Suddenly Goldie turned to her and quietly asked if she could hear her. The girl's voice was calm, but it sounded very distinct, as if it had interrupted the pleasant sensations. Dahlia was lost in thought and couldn't understand where the voice addressing her was coming from. Suddenly, Goldie explained that she had placed a magic circle on the back of her former partner's head to connect him to the energy of the world around him. The girl thought in confusion, never understanding when Goldie had placed the magic circle around her neck. The answer came unexpectedly. Goldie calmly admitted that she had done it without permission. Frightened by what she heard, Dahlia asked the girl in a trembling voice if it was true that she was not only in charge of the zombie army, but also of the Dark Knight. Goldie confirmed her fears. She calmly explained that in order to achieve important goals, she needed to keep Paracelsus and Dahlia together for a while. But now everything had changed. With the power of Paracelsus's recipe, she would gain the necessary tools to carry out her plans and be able to succeed. Goldie asked the girl to steal the recipe from the mentor, because he liked her, and if she asked, the guy would gladly give it to her. According to Goldie, the recipe should be in her breast pocket. As a thank you for her help, he promised to help her get out of this world, saying that there would be no problems with money and other matters. The confused and upset girl found it difficult to ask the question that worried her most. Why had the other girl gone to such extremes and tried to manipulate her? In response, she heard that it was impossible to explain the reasons. Dahlia spoke bitterly to the one who constantly wonders why she lives, and is just waiting to be eaten by zombies in this creepy, damp house. She no longer remembers the world beyond the walls where she was born and raised, completely forgetting about the freedom and joys available to ordinary people. The girl said that she had escaped with Paracelsus and could now live freely. He told her that she was an enemy because all their comrades had died because of her. She admitted that she felt a real relief and finally understood what was worth living for. Dahlia said that she wanted more than anything to kill Goldie and live with this man. She believed that the memories of her close friends were the best proof that she existed. Goldie listened carefully to her and asked that the man spend his last moments with her. Paracelsus felt a real joy when he saw that the pain in his eye began to subside. Looking around, he noticed that the vision in his right eye had returned, and it even seemed that everything around him was clearer and more contrasting than before. He looked around with delight, marveling at his new perception of reality. Everything now seemed as clear as if it were in 4K quality. When the boy began to look intently at distant objects, he noticed that he could see them much more clearly. Suddenly, the boys noticed an amazing sight. On the top of a distant hill, 2 little ladybugs were fighting fiercely, waving their tiny legs and pushing each other. This discovery greatly interested Paracelsus. He wanted to understand what his new abilities were capable of, so he decided to test how far the boundaries of his vision extended. The young man staggered and lost his balance. His left eye saw normally, but his right eye became too sensitive and precise. Due to the difference in the perception of images, he stopped coordinating his movements. Dahlia opened the door and looked at her mentor with concern. She asked if everything was okay. He replied that he was fine. He had just tripped. Remembering that he hadn't left a spare set of clothes for the girl near the bathroom, he felt a little embarrassed. Dahlia approached her mentor with an unusual request. She suspected that there was a magic circle on her neck and asked him to carefully examine the place and erase it. The guy listened carefully to her and immediately agreed to help. The girl thoughtfully decided that without a flow of magical energy, the magic circle would most likely simply not appear and would remain invisible to the naked eye. Deciding to try a different method, she suggested directing the magic exactly where their fingers touched. The boy was a little embarrassed, but agreed because it seemed both funny and unusual to him. Blushing slightly, he cautiously approached the girl. Having understood the new property of his vision, the boy decided to test it in practice. He turned on the magnification on his right eye and focused on the hidden part of the magic circle, trying to make out the details. As he investigated further, he suddenly noticed a brightly outlined circular seal on his companion's neck. The girl was in complete shock, as she had not yet activated her magical energy. What was happening seemed like an incomprehensible phenomenon, and caused her many questions and confusion. She asked him if he could see magic coming from her hand. He confirmed that he could see the glow too. She suggested that perhaps the bath had restored her magical powers so well that she no longer even noticed that she was using magic. Paracelsus understood that thanks to the Shoggoth eye, he could see what the ordinary eye could not see. But knowing that Goldie could listen, he decided not to say anything. Dahlia asked him to draw a circle sign on a piece of paper, explaining that the type of seal depended on how exactly to get rid of it. Leaving the girl in the house, the young man carefully climbed onto the roof, carefully choosing where to stand and checking each time whether the support was holding. Looking down to the side, he heard the girl's voice, quietly warning him to be more careful. As he climbed higher, he realized that it was best to practice alchemy in a safe place. An alchemy workshop would be ideal, but it was unlikely to be found here. In addition, there were many religious buildings around, and this could have a strong influence on the subconscious. Paracelsus wondered whether to continue looking for a suitable alchemical laboratory, or a shop where he could buy the necessary ingredients and equipment. Another thought was that perhaps it would be worth visiting a castle on a high mountain. Suddenly, the boy said he saw people in the castle window. Dahlia, not knowing where to look, blinked her eyes in confusion, trying to find the place with her gaze. He asked his companion to wait while he took a closer look at the castle window. After a few seconds, his eyes widened in surprise. There was a child standing there. Paracelsus froze in place, unable to believe his eyes, when he saw familiar faces in the window. Dahlia and Sylvia. They were in the castle. The girl who was next to him could not understand why this excited him so much, because she did not know what exactly caused the boy so much strong emotions and anxiety. The teacher asked if she had been to that castle before. Dolly said no. She rarely left the house at all, and there must have been a high wall in front of the castle. She said that the area around the castle is a real nightmare, inhabited not only by ordinary zombies, but also by various monsters that no one alive has ever seen before. The girl continued to explain that it was an almost circular area around the cathedral. They had tried to get out on their own more than once, but each time they had failed. Therefore, they searched for food and conducted reconnaissance only within this area. The young man realized that it seemed that other residents of the city had also been unable to get through the wall. He then decided to check if there were similar people in other parts of the mirror world to see how big the problem was. Paracelsus explained that he wanted to see the buildings outside the fortress walls. After weighing all the pros and cons, he decided that he would probably go there alone. But Dahlia, who did not want to part with her mentor, categorically refused and loudly declared that she would definitely go with him. A few hours later, the boy was surprised to learn that people also lived outside the fortress walls. Among them was Sylvia, whom he knew, and other members of the community. The young man wanted to tell Dahlia important information, but first asked to be given some time to gather his thoughts. The data he had learned during his research seemed very valuable and could even be dangerous. Walking along the wall, Paracelsus realized that there were other places nearby where girls lived. I decided to imagine that there were many places like the cathedral in the country. Small areas with simple living conditions, surrounded by a wall. If you imagined that all over the country there would be countless of them. The thought of so many people made my head spin. It turns out that another amazing event awaits the children. They are about to gain a new, incredible ability. He began to list the abilities of Goldie that he knew about. She could control the dead, walk through mirrors. In addition, it turned out that Goldie could create copies of people. The young man suggested that there might have been other owners of these abilities before him, whom the woman had somehow chosen and appropriated their abilities. Paracelsus didn't understand why she was doing this, and thought that she had a deep resentment towards these people, which is why she had left them in this terrible place, where zombies had become a normal part of life. The young man is frightened by the very thought that zombies could become a normal part of everyday life. He wondered if it was possible that the famous ability to control zombies was not a separate skill, but a personal trait of Goldie's, linked to her innate magic. It seemed impossible to him. Hundreds and thousands of people who secretly despise or hate forbidden magic, their subconscious hostility eventually weakens it. Furthermore, there are no humans in the mirror world, so magic can be used without restrictions. He wondered what would happen if many people were created for whom magic was forbidden, a common occurrence. In this case, the subconscious influence would, on the contrary, further strengthen this magic. This theory explains how Goldie, being just one person, is able to control a large number of zombies. In the mirror world, she enhances her necromantic abilities. Paracelsus looked at his comrade carefully and cautiously said that Goldie probably had forbidden magic. The conversation was long, but he wanted her to listen to the end. He explained to her that in this world, forbidden magic was not only permitted, but also becoming stronger. Dahlia knew more about magic than he did, so she took it all in stride. The young man said that, of course, one could assume that all three of these powers were received from God, but in his opinion, it would not hurt to assume that this place was the basis for forbidden magic. In the case of this power, Goldie could change all of reality, so a basis was not needed for it. Dahlia understood that because of forbidden magic, they and completely different people were falling into traps. And all this for only one reason. Paracelsus asked about the people on the other side, and, trying not to scare the girl, he answered, "There are people there who are exactly the same as here." The student, with excitement in her voice, asked if she had understood correctly that there was another version of her personality that could repeat itself many times and exist in parallel with her. The mentor confirmed her guess and explained that, in his opinion, this idea was the most logical and reasonable. The girl thoughtfully added that there are blurred moments in her memory, missing memories, and incomprehensible episodes that are difficult to explain. She admitted that, having thought about what it could be like to be someone's copy, she suddenly realized how harmoniously the mosaic of her life fits together. Although the Paracelsian had expected the news to make an impression, the student's reaction was much stronger than he had expected. The girl looked confused and upset, as if she had just realized for the first time that her life was just an illusion with its limits. Suddenly, Goldie's familiar voice came from the magic seal, flattering and slightly mocking. She said she was simply amazed that the boy had figured everything out on his own. She added that at first she wanted to give them time to enjoy their date, but now she realized that the guy was quite attentive, and she shouldn't underestimate alchemy. Paracelsus, overcome with excitement and anxiety, cupped Daly's head, gently running his hand over her face. Carefully touching the skin around her eyes with his fingertips, he examined her closely, trying to find any changes or damage. Watching the boy's efforts, Goldie indifferently noted that trying to pull out the eyes was futile. The magic circles were carved not only on the eyes, but also on vital organs, spreading throughout the victim's body like a web of dark threads. Moreover, she cynically added that she would truly be sorry if the boy unnecessarily hurt the girl through his careless actions. Her warning sounded like a threat, forcing him to stop and think about the consequences of his actions. The young man was really curious as to why she had let them go when it was already clear that the lie about the book had been exposed. Goldie calmly explained that she understood that even if they became friends, she couldn't take away his abilities and inclinations. Instead, she decided to do something different. She planned to win the game over time and use her advantages. She added that it was not worth blaming Dahlia, as her warm feelings and constant presence were also part of a well-thought-out plan. The young man frowned, realizing that the enemy could have used charm magic. Goldie went on to say that through these events she had learned a lot about Paracelsus. Of course, she was curious to learn about the boy's second ability, but she didn't want to show too much curiosity, and decided to move on to the next stage of her plan. The girl affectionately called the guy a good hero, noting that with this approach he hopes to resolve all conflicts peacefully, and she heard an affirmative answer from him. She added that she was very happy about such a coincidence of opinions. Goldie said she had a request for him. She asked him to give her her ability for at least an hour. That would be enough. She added that after that she would tell him all her circumstances, and then he would decide for himself how to proceed. The young man agreed, hoping that she was truly honest in her intentions. The enemy suggested that the young man come to the cathedral, where she would wait for him. Paracelsus believed that it would be much simpler and clearer if she had expressed her request immediately. Dahlia stood with her head down, apologizing quietly. She blamed herself for listening to her mentor, believing that unnecessary problems and difficulties had arisen because of her. Tears streamed down her cheeks, taking away the innocence from her childish face and leaving an imprint of shame and regret. The guy confidently said that there was nothing to be afraid of, and suggested that they first return to the cathedral. The student agreed to this idea. Goldie realized that Dahlia's charm had increased her value as a hostage, and now Parcells would definitely want to give up the recipe himself. She said that once he had the recipe, the Dark Knight could do whatever he wanted with it. The boys continued on their way, but now they were completely exhausted. Going without sleep was simply unbearable, so they decided to briefly pause their march and organize a short stop for rest. The mentor created some slimes for protection and asked Dahlia to draw magic circles so that they could protect themselves in case of danger. Since the contract did not require immediate appearance, it was better to rest. Dahlia noticed that the mentor seemed to like slimes. Waste-eating slime. This slime loves human waste and cleanses the body even better than a bath. It most often lives in the stomach and intestines. The young man decided to take care of the cleanliness and hygiene of his student, so he gave her a little helper. He explained that maintaining hygiene was very important, because the cleanliness of the body contributes to health and well-being. Dahlia agreed. The girl was very ticklish and asked the snail to stop and not clean her. Paracelsus asked what kind of creature it was. Dahlia replied that it was a rune seeker. It appears in places where there are magic circles of the appropriate type nearby. By passing magical energy through different parts of her body, she can sense exactly where and what magical circles are located. Dahlia went on to explain that she had 2 magic circles behind her eyes and 3 circles in her stomach. These circles relayed information about her location and surrounding sounds to the wizard. Paracelsus was surprised that there was nothing dangerous in the circles, and asked if there were explosive magic circles among them. The girl replied that no, otherwise she would have died long ago, because without even noticing it, she spends magic every day through her body in ordinary life. She added that she had already figured it out a little. If you enter the magic formula through the skin, you can adjust the magic circles so that they only transmit approximate locations and indecipherable speech. But there is one more detail. Dahlia thought that it would only be a nuisance anyway, and asked if she could go with him. Paris also replied that, of course, the girl should stay with him. He believed that separation was very dangerous. If she were kidnapped, locked in an unknown place, and started being abused with the help of magic, he simply would not be able to stand it. Besides, the boy didn't want to give Goldie another advantage, so it was better to keep her around. Dahlia understood his logic. The child was sincerely happy when she heard the words of approval. Dahlia added that she wanted to get some sleep after she finished her drawing. Paracelsus said that if she needed any help, she should tell him right away. He understood that even if they got a little off track, they would still reach the cathedral in less than a day. Whatever the circumstances, the boy believed that everything would end there. The guy also thought it was time to use the potion. The best luck potion is one that absorbs luck. It works for 24 hours after the first sip. The effect of luck has a limit, so large sips do not add anything. It is better to drink a little once a day. Paracelsus believed that this potion could be divided into 6 doses, and it was better to do it with minimal expenses. If you take it often, addiction develops, and the person begins to have bad luck. It is best to use the potion no more than once a month. He also understood that they did not have a clear plan, and everything depended only on luck. The mentor said that it would give him strength and suggested that Dahlia drink it too. She agreed. The young man told her that a bed had been prepared for her upstairs, and he would live in the room next door. The girl thanked him, but she really wanted to spend the night with him. Having gone out to the observation deck, the boy noticed the estate of St. Herman. Because of the mirror reflection, he didn't understand at first, but the mansion still exists in this world. The young man entered Dahlia's room, greeted her, and said that before going to the cathedral, they needed to prepare something, so they would have to deviate a little from their route first. Paracelsus added that within the territory where they could move freely was the mansion of an alchemist, and suggested that they use it. The girl asked if this was his friend's house. The young man replied that it was the estate of his teacher, who had lived a very long life among the alchemists, and was known as the immortal Saint Herman. The student noticed that the teacher frowned slightly at the mention of this name. He knew they had 2 hours to get there, and he thought there might be some powerful alchemical item or material there that he could concoct and make into something useful. The boy set off. The boy also knew that zombies stand at the same distance from each other. When zombies start chasing people or when people destroy them, this order is broken. The boy decided that if you see a broken zombie formation, you can tell if there are people nearby. Suddenly, Paracelsus noticed something strange. A line of zombies broke apart, and he wondered if there were anyone else in that direction. Opening the door of the nearest building, the young man saw Sylvia inside, who was surprised to see them. Knight was glad that they were alive and asked Dahlia to help her with her magic. The girl quickly approached her. Sylvia sincerely thanked the girl and sighed with relief, thinking that misfortune had befallen her. But this happiness passed her by. Sylvia said that the Dark Knight is a real beast. He is extremely strong and excellent with a sword. He is much stronger than her, but even defeating him brought her pleasure and joy. The girl realized that they would have to face the Dark Knight, and asked for another chance. She wanted to fight him one-on-one, honestly and openly. Paracelsus told her everything that had happened. Sylvia realized that Goldie was behind it all, and that they were all just copies. It was hard to believe, but it all matched. She knew almost nothing about the world outside this place. Knight thanked Dahlia for her help, and told the boys to try their best. They asked if she would come with them. Sylvia thought they wanted to stay somewhere for the night and apologized that she couldn't join them. The girl asked the boy not to regret it later. Paracelsus said it was time for them to go, and the girl agreed. Meanwhile, on the estate of St. Herman, there were 2 alchemical workshops. The first was used by St. Herman himself, and the second was worked by his student. St. Herman was very secretive and feared that someone might steal his recipes, even among other alchemists. Paracelsus realized that there was nothing interesting in the second workshop, and decided to inspect the first. Dahlia believed that students should receive knowledge from the teacher, and noted with sadness that even watching him work was forbidden. The guy said that he would not explain anything to them. Their task was to seek the truth in everything themselves. He thought that he simply needed labor and did not intend to teach. The young man also did not understand what could be stolen from a hermit sitting in a closed workshop, and, apologizing to the teacher for coming in, he noticed an old but fully equipped room. Paracelsus began to look for something useful and warned that there might be traps here. Then Dahlia approached him. She showed him that there were magic circles on the wall. The young man realized that it was a secret safe that only those who were allowed could see. It seemed that there had been a mistake. The protection had been mirrored, so it didn't work, and they were just lucky. There were 3 more keyholes on the wheel. The teacher really didn't want anyone to see this. Paracelsus turned to Selena and realized that he had been very lucky. The slime, who received the name, became smarter and liked to solve puzzles, especially when communicating with others. He could solve even the most difficult tasks. The young man was glad that his friend had already opened and taken out the research notes. He was a little embarrassed, but he decided to familiarize himself with their contents. Dolly noticed that this book was not mirrored. The boy thought that the book had already been mirrored at first. It would be good to find the same solutions as with the ceiling for Biden's magic. Then he read that late-night gatherings reduce attention, and that it is better to go to bed by 10 o'clock at night. Regarding nutrition, it is important to keep a balance between vegetables, meat, and cereals. You should not overeat. It is good if your diet includes as many different vegetables as possible. This is good for your health. After reading this, the young man realized that these are ordinary tips for a healthy lifestyle. Dahlia asked if it was possible to live that long by following these rules. Paracelsus replied that there were rumors that her people had created living water for immortality. But he doubted that the advice alone was enough to live 200 years. And he remembered what he had been told. The boy only wanted to learn more recipes. But if you just learn the method and repeat it, even a dog can do it. The teacher added that you should try to look for the deeper truth. The old man said that there are no easy ways. There is only persistent repetition of the basics, which is almost imperceptible to the eye. It is with experience that a person gradually discovers the truth that is hidden in everything around him. He asked Paracelsus to do a routine job for him. The young man remembered how his mentor had told him that if he didn't share his knowledge, he wouldn't pass the Alchemist exam. The teacher didn't care about that. Ordinary routine work was also useful, and he only gave him tasks that were beneficial to him. The young man's face contorted, and Dahlia noticed the wrinkles that had appeared. The young man thought that he needed to find something like living water, or some other remedy that could help. But Paracelsus found nothing. It seems that in search of a method of rejuvenation, he conducted a lot of research but never achieved a result. He also remembered that Saint Herman, when he was looking for living water, had found many other interesting things. He had tried very hard, so something valuable was bound to remain. The young man noticed part of the recipe for the Philosopher's Stone, and here another find was revealed to him. He noticed a liquid that dissolves anything and turns everything back to its original substance. It's a true universal solvent. Thanks to it, they will definitely be able to cure Koko. Dahlia asked in surprise if there was anything useful in it. Paracelsus replied that it was, but it wouldn't help them now. He had no time to finish when the sound of an ancient cane rang out in the room. The gray-haired man asked the boy if he really agreed to this. Saint Herman didn't know what tricks he was using, but he didn't have enough knowledge to pass the exam. He asked why the flower was that color, and emphasized that if we continued to investigate and understand even a little bit of the truth about the world, it would benefit people. That's what alchemy is. The teacher had no objection to striving only for results, but this was not magic. No matter what anyone said, he would not admit it. Saint Herman ordered them to leave immediately and never appear before him again. After that, he turned to the false traveler and left the young man and the girl alone. Paracelsus threw the book into the oven. Dahlia asked why he was burning it. The young man replied that he wanted to find and create everything he needed himself. The mentor gave her clothes from the estate and asked her if she liked them. The girl replied that she liked them very much. The guy said that these clothes don't burn in fire, and even if a zombie bites her, it will hurt, but the clothes will hold up. Besides, her spells will be harder to spot. And if something happens, let her put on a hood and keep her gloves on until it's all over. Paracelsus took out a telescopic staff. It was heavy and might come in handy if the negotiations went badly. He took it from the armory, though he wasn't sure it would help him. Dea hoped that everything would go well. Her mentor told her that she would have to make many difficult choices ahead, so it was worth considering different options for the development of events now. If he has to fight Goldie, he will do it, even if it means risking his life. But before that happens, he wants her to decide whose side she is on. Dea understood him and continued to talk about the magic circle inside her body. It wasn't dangerous in itself, but it seemed like it was made in case she was taken hostage. She couldn't give any more details. The girl added that if she was taken hostage, she asked to be left alone. After all, she had many questions. How long had she been here? Which of her memories were real, and which were not? When would her end come? She had spent her whole life in the unknown, not understanding anything. Dahlia continued and said that when she found out that she was a copy, she felt better because it turned out to be just a fake. But she didn't want to stay here anymore. If she couldn't get out, she asked Paracelsus to let her die.